The covert agency outpost looked like any other tech startup nestled in the heart of New York City. Sleek glass walls, rows of computers, and young engineers hunched over their screens. But behind the facade of innovation and harmless coding, hidden beneath layers of encrypted security and secret protocols, was a team dedicated to tracking the world's deadliest threats. And tonight, 3 agents were about to break all the rules. In the dimly lit back room of the outpost, far from the prying eyes of the agency's new leadership, Alex, Karina, and Ashley met in secret. The air inside the small room was heavy with tension, the kind that spoke of forbidden decisions and dangerous consequences. "Everything's changed since the new command took over," Alex muttered, her eyes scanning the room as if someone might be listening. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Reassigned to paperwork while Black Dawn grows stronger. It's a joke." Karina sitting across from her didn't share Alex's nervousness. Her expression remained calm, though her fingers lightly traced the edge of her katana that rested on her lap, a habit she'd picked up after years of combat. "They're playing it safe, Alex. After everything that went down with Black Dawn, they're too scared to make bold moves." "But playing it safe is going to get more people killed." Alex's voice was sharp, frustration barely contained. "Ultranacious is out there, and they're pretending he's not." Ashley, who had been quietly listening, spoke up at last. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of leadership. "They don't want us making noise. They're restructuring, trying to tighten control. And we've become liabilities. They'd rather bury us under bureaucracy than risk another mission like New Haven." At the mention of New Haven, the room seemed to grow colder. None of them needed to revisit the details. The scars, both physical and emotional, still lingered from that disastrous mission. "And now," Alex added bitterly, "we're stuck behind a desk while the real enemy moves unchecked. We're the only ones who know Ultranacious Eternus is planning something big." Ashley's eyes narrowed as she considered their situation. She had always been the cautious one, the one to weigh risks carefully before acting, but even she knew they couldn't afford to sit idle. Not now. "If we go rogue," she said slowly, "there's no turning back. We'll be on our own. No resources, no backup. Just us." "That's how it's always been," Karina replied, her voice steady. "The agency doesn't need to know everything we do. We've handled worse on our own." Alex leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Exactly. We're the best they've got, and they're too blind to see it. If we stay here, we're just waiting for the next disaster. If we leave, we might actually stop it." Ashley looked at them both, weighing her decision. She knew the stakes. They all did. The moment they walked out of that room, they'd become fugitives, hunted not just by Black Dawn, but by the very agency they'd sworn to protect. But staying felt worse than the alternative. It felt like surrendering. "All right," she said finally, her voice low but resolute. "We do this quietly. We keep our heads down, move fast, and don't make mistakes. Our first move will be New Orleans. There's been chatter about supernatural disturbances, could be Black Dawn remnants." Karina nodded. "I've already got contacts there. We can blend in, gather intel, and figure out if it's them. If Black Dawn is active in the city, we'll know soon enough." Alex smiled for the first time that night. It wasn't a smile of relief, but one of determination. They were taking control, doing what they did best. "So we're doing this?" Ashley stood, pulling her tactical jacket tighter around her shoulders. "We're doing this." The 3 agents stood in silent agreement, a shared understanding passing between them. They had fought side by side for years through blood and betrayal, and now they were about to face their most dangerous mission yet, without the agency's sanction. They weren't just breaking protocol, they were severing ties. As they prepared to leave, the room suddenly felt smaller, more confined, as though the walls themselves knew what they were about to do. But none of them hesitated. The path ahead was dangerous, but it was the only one left. Their first step would take them to the dark streets of New Orleans, a place where secrets and shadows thrived. If Black Dawn was there, they would find them, and this time there would be no red tape holding them back. New Orleans was alive with music and magic, the heartbeat of the city echoing in the night air. The trio moved through the narrow streets, blending seamlessly into the crowd of tourists and revelers. Jazz floated through the humid air, mixing with the scents of gumbo and spices, but beneath the vibrant pulse of the city, something dark stirred. Alex, Karina, and Ashley had slipped into their roles easily, posing as travelers just passing through. They walked past shops filled with voodoo trinkets and fortune tellers, their eyes scanning the streets for any sign of Black Dawn activity. New Orleans was a city where the line between the natural and the supernatural had always been thin, and it was the perfect hunting ground for those seeking to exploit ancient powers. Alex adjusted the brim of her hat, her eyes flickering from one passing face to another. "The chatter wasn't wrong," she murmured, keeping her voice low. "Something's happening here, I can feel it." Ashley, walking beside her, nodded subtly. "Keep it casual. The last thing we need is to spook anyone." Karina, always more comfortable in combat than covert operations, kept her hands shoved in her pockets, fingers brushing the hilt of a concealed blade. "Let's just hope we don't have to chase shadows all night." They had picked up rumours about strange occurrences around the outskirts of the city, faint whispers of dark rituals and unnatural events. Locals spoke of ghosts, curses and spirits that wandered the swamps, but it wasn't the dead they were hunting. It was the living. Black Dawn operatives who had surfaced in New Orleans, conducting rituals that drew on the city's ancient roots. "Anything on the scanner?" Karina asked, her voice betraying a hint of impatience. Alex checked the small device concealed in her bag, which monitored any unusual energy spikes or radio frequencies. "We're close. There's something irregular ahead." They followed the trail out of the bustling French Quarter and into the quiet, forgotten parts of the city. The streets narrowed, the noise of the city faded, and soon they stood before an old mansion. The structure loomed in front of them, its windows shattered and its once grand architecture crumbling under the weight of time. Vines crawled up the walls, and the iron gate was rusted with neglect. The locals avoided this place, and for good reason. "This feels like the right kind of wrong," Karina muttered, drawing her blade. Ashley glanced at her, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly. "Stay sharp. We're not here to pick a fight, unless we have to." The three agents moved silently through the overgrown yard and slipped into the mansion's decaying interior. The smell of mold and rot was overwhelming, but beneath that, Alex caught the faint scent of burning incense, something pungent and acrid, like sulfur. "They're here," Alex whispered. Her pulse quickened as she led them deeper into the mansion. "This way." They descended into the basement through a hidden stairwell, carefully moving down the creaking steps. At the bottom, a faint light flickered, illuminating the stone walls with an eerie glow. As they approached the chamber, the sound of chanting grew louder, the words foreign and ominous. Peering through the crack in the door, Alex saw them. 6 Black Dawn operatives, dressed in dark robes, gathered around a stone altar. Strange symbols were etched into the floor, glowing with a faint red light. In the center of the altar lay a human skull, and around it, burning candles flickered wildly, as if caught in a gust of wind that wasn't there. "They're in the middle of something serious," Alex said, her voice low and urgent. "We need to disrupt this, but we can't rush in blind." Ashley nodded, quickly assessing the situation. "We hit hard and fast, but we need intel too. If there's any clue about their next move, we can't leave without it." Karina grinned, already eager for the fight. "I've got your back. Just say the word." The plan was simple. Alex would go in first, under the guise of a lost traveller. Her expertise in undercover work was unparalleled, and they needed to know what Black Dawn was planning. Ashley and Karina would hang back, ready to strike if anything went wrong. Alex straightened her jacket and took a deep breath before stepping through the doorway, adopting a confused expression. "Hey! Is this where the ghost tour is?" The chanting stopped abruptly as all eyes turned to her. The leader, a tall man with sharp features and cold eyes, stepped forward. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice dripping with menace. Alex raised her hands in mock surrender, her heart pounding in her chest. "Whoa, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just looking for the tour, and I must have taken a wrong turn. I'll just go—" Before she could finish, two operatives grabbed her by the arms, pulling her toward the altar. "Let's see what you really know," the leader sneered. As they dragged her closer, Alex's mind raced. She needed to stay calm, to gather as much information as possible. Her eyes darted to the altar, where the symbols glowed brighter now, and then to the dark book lying open on a nearby table. She could make out a few words, but the language was ancient, unfamiliar. Suddenly, a figure moved in the shadows, Karina. Without hesitation, she struck, taking down one of the guards in a blur of motion. Ashley followed, her movements swift and calculated as she disarmed another operative. Chaos erupted in the chamber. The operatives scrambled, caught off guard by the sudden attack. Alex used the distraction to break free, slipping into the shadows and grabbing the dark book from the table. Karina's combat skills were a force of nature, each strike deliberate, each movement precise. She moved like a predator, her blade cutting through the air with lethal efficiency. Beside her, Ashley directed the chaos, calling out orders and keeping them focused. "Alex, what do you have?" Ashley shouted, dodging a wild swing from one of the remaining operatives. Alex frantically flipped through the pages of the book, her eyes scanning the text. "They're summoning something," she said breathlessly. "There's a necromancer in the Bayou, someone with ties to Ultranacious." "We need to move," Karina shouted, finishing off the last operative with a swift strike. "More could be coming." With the operatives incapacitated, the trio quickly gathered what they could from the lair. Alex stuffed the book into her bag, her mind racing with the implications of what she had read. This wasn't just about Black Dawn. It was about something far darker, something ancient that was waking in the Bayou. Ashley led the way out, guiding them through the mansion's crumbling halls and out into the night. The tension still hung thick in the air as they slipped back into the shadows of the city. "We head to the Bayou," Ashley said, her voice steady despite the growing threat. "If this necromancer has ties to Ultranacious, they're our next lead." Alex nodded, her thoughts still on the dark rituals they had interrupted. Whatever they were summoning, we can't let it happen. As they vanished into the night, the oppressive weight of what lay ahead pressed down on them. New Orleans was only the beginning. The hunt for Ultranacious Eternus had truly begun. The Bayou lay before them like a living creature, shrouded in fog and filled with the slow breath of ancient, unseen forces. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. Spanish moss dripped from the gnarled trees like fingers reaching down to the swamp below. Every step Alex, Karina, and Ashley took seemed to be swallowed by the mud, the weight of the Bayou's magic pressing in on them from all sides. "Feels like the swamp's alive," Karina muttered, her hand instinctively resting on the hilt of her katana, ever ready. "It's watching us." Ashley moved cautiously ahead, her eyes scanning the murky water and dense foliage. The mist clung to them, making it hard to see more than a few feet in any direction. "That's because it probably is. Madame Laveau doesn't want visitors, especially not uninvited ones." The environment resisted their every step. The twisted roots of the trees seemed to shift beneath their feet, as though the land itself was testing them, daring them to move deeper into its secrets. Strange sounds echoed through the mist, whispers in a language they didn't understand, the occasional splash of something unseen moving through the water, and the distant croak of unseen creatures. "Are we sure this is the way?" Alex asked, glancing down at her wrist device, which had long since lost its signal. Nothing's showing up on the tracker. Ashley didn't slow down. We're close. Trust me. This isn't about tech. This is about intuition and a bit of survival instinct. The Bayou had always been a place where the rules of the natural world bent to the will of something older, something untamed. And in the heart of it, hidden away from prying eyes, lay Madame Laveau's cabin, a place not marked on any map, known only to those who dealt in the dark arts. It was a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place where magic ran deeper than the water and the trees themselves carried secrets. Hours passed as they navigated through the thick mud, avoiding sinkholes and the supernatural hazards that lurked in the shadows. Will-o'-the-wisps flickered in the distance, leading them astray before disappearing into nothingness. Enchanted quicksand nearly swallowed them whole, its surface shimmering with a hypnotic pull. But finally, through the dense mist and tangled trees, the outline of a small, weathered cabin came into view. The structure looked as though it had stood there for centuries, untouched by time, its wooden walls bowed slightly under the weight of its own history. Powerful wards were etched into the ground around it, glowing faintly in the fading light. Strange symbols hung from the branches of nearby trees, their purpose clear: keep out. This place, Alex whispered, feeling the weight of the magic in the air. It's like the Bayou itself is alive here. It is, Karina replied, her voice low. Everything here is part of the spell. As they approached the cabin, they were stopped dead in their tracks by an invisible force. The air around them shimmered, and Karina, always attuned to the unseen, raised her hand. It's a barrier, she said. Strong magic. She knows we're here. Ashley stepped forward, speaking into the mist. We're not here to harm you, Madame Laveau. We seek your help. An eerie silence followed. For a moment, it felt as though the whole Bayou held its breath, waiting. Then, slowly, the door to the cabin creaked open, revealing the silhouette of an older woman, her form draped in shadow. Her eyes, sharp and glinting with ancient wisdom, fixed on the trio as she stepped into the doorway. Madame Laveau was formidable. Her presence alone seemed to command the air around her, bending it to her will. She was wrapped in a dark cloak, her face lined with the weight of centuries. Her eyes, though, were alive with magic, with knowledge, with the kind of power that made even the bravest men falter. What brings you to my domain, trespassers? Her voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it, an unspoken warning. You seek knowledge, but your hearts are heavy with fear and desperation. Tell me, why should I help you? Ashley took a deep breath, stepping forward cautiously. She met Madame Laveau's gaze head-on, though she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. We're here to stop Black Dawn. They're planning to summon Ultranacious Eternus to bring him back to Earth. We can't let that happen. Madame Laveau watched them, her expression unreadable, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She said nothing, only stared into each of them, as if weighing their souls. Many have come before you, she said after a long pause, seeking power, seeking revenge. What makes you different? Why should I help those who come from a broken world? Alex, sensing the opportunity, stepped forward. She spoke quietly, but her words carried the weight of their losses. We don't seek power. We don't seek revenge. We've lost too much already. Our friends, our agency. We just want to stop more destruction before it's too late. Madame Laveau's eyes softened at the mention of their sacrifices. She studied them for a long moment before nodding slightly. The Demon King's shadow stretches far, even here in the Bayou. His corruption seeps into the land, twisting the natural order to his will. But, she paused, her gaze shifting between the three of them. I see truth in your eyes, and a fire that will not be easily extinguished. She stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. The air inside the cabin was thick with the scent of incense and herbs. Candles burned low on a small altar adorned with bones, charms, and strange ancient symbols. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, some bound in leather, others in materials the trio dared not question. Jars of strange ingredients lined the surfaces, and the very air hummed with magic. Madame Laveau moved to the altar, lighting a new candle as she spoke. Ultranacious's plan is more dangerous than you realize. He left fragments of his essence scattered across the world, hidden in dark artifacts. These artifacts, if brought together, will create a portal strong enough to bring him back from his exile. She turned to face them, holding an ancient, dusty tome in her hands. The Black Dawn is already hunting these artifacts. If they succeed in retrieving them all, they will summon Ultranacious back, and your world will fall into darkness. Opening the tome, she revealed a map of the world, marked with several key locations. Each location pulsed with power, and each was guarded by fierce protectors, creatures loyal to Ultranacious. These artifacts are tied to the elements: fire, water, earth, air, spirit, and shadow. You must retrieve them before Black Dawn does. But be warned, each artifact is protected by powerful curses and guardians who will not be easily defeated. She handed the map to Ashley and turned to Alex, giving her a small enchanted compass. This will guide you to the artifacts, but only if your intent is pure. If your heart falters, it will lead you astray. The weight of their task settled over them like a heavy fog. They would have to travel across the globe facing guardians, curses, and the relentless pursuit of Black Dawn, all without the agency's support. Before they left, Madame Laveau gave them one last piece of advice, her voice tinged with an ominous warning. The journey ahead will not only test your skills, but your souls. Stay true to your cause, for it is the only light in the coming darkness. The trio left the bayou behind, the distant call of the swamp creatures fading into the night as they made their way back to the city. The path ahead was perilous, but they had no choice. Each of them carried their own demons, and as they prepared for the next leg of their journey to the catacombs of Rome, they knew that the battles to come would test more than just their strength. The hum of the plane's engines droned softly in the background as the trio sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The private plane, modest in size and comfort, reflected their current rogue status, far from the polished operations they were used to. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, a calm expanse of blue with lazy clouds drifting below. But inside the cabin, the weight of their mission pressed down heavily. Alex stared out of the window, her reflection distorted against the backdrop of the passing sky. Her mind wasn't on the mission ahead, but on the ghosts of her past. The day Black Dawn attacked the agency was seared into her memory, the chaos, the explosions, the shouting. But it wasn't the destruction she remembered most. It was Trinity. Trinity had been a tech genius, the agency's brightest mind, and Alex's closest friend. She had always found a way to bring humor and light into even the darkest moments. During the attack, Trinity had stayed behind in the server room, frantically working to initiate a lockdown and protect the agency's secrets. Alex had been running toward her, heart pounding, only to be stopped by the sight of flames engulfing the room. She clenched her fists, a familiar ache settling in her chest. I owe it to Trinity. I owe it to all of them. Her jaw tightened as she silently vowed once again to stop Black Dawn, no matter the cost. Karina, sitting across from Alex, was quiet as well, her katana resting across her lap. She absent-mindedly traced the blade with her fingers, her face a mask of calm, but her thoughts were anything but. Her mind drifted back to the mission that still haunted her, the extraction of Alexandra. It should have been simple, but Black Dawn had been waiting for them. The ambush had been brutal. Des and Jewel, two of their best, had taken the brunt of it. Jewel had been bleeding out, urging them to leave her behind as Des, despite losing a leg, continued to fight. The memory of Des in a wheelchair, her career over, and Jewel still recovering, weighed heavily on Karina. She had rescued Alexandra, but at what cost? Karina wondered if redemption was even possible for her. How many more lives would be lost in this fight? How many more sacrifices? Ashley sat across from her two teammates, her eyes moving between them. As the leader, she carried the burden of their emotions, their pain, and their losses. She had seen too much destruction, too many lives broken by Black Dawn's cruelty. She thought back to the day she had to tell Jewel's family about the injury, and dares that she would never return to the field. The helplessness that had gripped her that day still gnawed at her. I can't make another mistake, she thought, gripping the armrest tightly. The pressure to protect them, to lead them without further casualties, weighed heavily on her shoulders. I won't lose anyone else. The silence in the cabin was thick, the unspoken pain shared between them. Finally, Alex broke the stillness, her voice rough with emotion. Do you think we're doing the right thing, going rogue like this? She didn't look at either of them, her gaze still fixed on the sky. Gunnar told us to wait. What if we're just chasing ghosts? Karina's eyes darkened, a mixture of anger and sadness flickering across her face. We can't just sit around while Black Dawn gathers strength. We owe it to Trinity, to Des, to Jewel, to everyone we've lost. We have to stop them. Ashley nodded, her voice steady but filled with resolve. Karina's right. If we don't fight, no one will. We owe it to those we've lost to keep going, to make sure their sacrifices mean something. Alex sighed, leaning back in her seat. I know. I wish it didn't have to be this way. Ashley reached across the aisle, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. We're in this together, Alex. We all carry the weight of our losses, but we also carry the strength of those who fought beside us. We have to trust each other and keep moving forward. Karina, nodding in agreement, sheathed her katana and leaned back in her seat. We've all lost people we care about, but we have each other, and we have a mission. That's what matters now. The tension in the cabin eased slightly, the shared understanding between them reinforcing their bond. They had all seen the horrors of war, and while the past haunted them, it also gave them the strength to keep fighting. As the plane continued its journey toward Rome, the trio shifted from reflection to planning. They knew that without careful preparation, the risks of their rogue mission would far outweigh the rewards. Ashley unfolded a large map of Rome across the small table in the plane's cabin, the city's ancient streets and landmarks marked with various symbols Madame Laveau had indicated. Our target is in the catacombs beneath Rome, Ashley began, pointing to a section of the map. The artifact is hidden deep underground, guarded by the spirit of a fallen warrior. We have to retrieve it before Black Dawn does, without attracting attention. Alex leaned in, studying the map with a furrowed brow. The main entrances are out. Too many cameras, too much exposure. We'll need to find an alternate way in. There's an old tunnel network that's been sealed off for years, Karina added, her eyes narrowing in concentration. If we can find an access point, we can avoid the security and get straight to the catacombs. Ashley tapped a location on the map. There's a rumor about a hidden entrance beneath the Santi Apostoli Church. It's abandoned, and the locals avoid it. They say it's haunted. Alex smirked. Haunted? Sounds like our kind of place. But we'll need to move fast, Ashley warned. We don't know how much time we have before Black Dawn makes their move. Karina checked her katana, ensuring it was sharp and ready for the fight ahead. And once we're in, we need to be ready for anything. If that spirit is as powerful as Madame Laveau said, it won't go down easily. Ashley nodded, her gaze hardening. Let's go over the plan one more time. The trio went over every detail, mapping out their infiltration into the ancient catacombs, their strategy for avoiding detection, and the steps they would take to retrieve the artifact. They knew the risks, but they also knew they couldn't afford to fail. Their enemies were growing stronger, and the fate of their world depended on them staying one step ahead. As the plane descended toward Rome, the trio prepared themselves for the challenges ahead. They had survived loss and betrayal, and they were determined to survive this mission too. Together, they would face the shadows of the past and forge a path toward the future, no matter how dark the road became. The streets of Rome are quiet when they arrive, shadows stretching long under the glow of street lamps. The team moves swiftly through the city, staying off the main roads to avoid attention. They slip through the back alleys, their figures blending into the darkness. Ahead looms the Santi Apostoli Church, a decaying structure partially hidden by overgrown ivy. The place is silent, and the doors, heavily chained, seem to guard something far more dangerous than mere ruins. Alex takes the lead, expertly picking the lock with swift precision. The heavy door creaks open, and the trio enters the forgotten church. Inside, the air is thick with dust, and the stale scent of mildew hangs heavily in the air. They make their way through the main hall, guided only by their flashlights. The church is dark, its ancient architecture bathed in shadows, giving it an eerie, haunted quality. It's easy to understand why locals avoid it. In the basement, they find the hidden passage, just as Madame Laveau had predicted. Behind a stack of forgotten crates and broken pews, there is a small crumbling opening that leads into the depths below. Alex pulls out the enchanted compass, watching as it glows faintly, guiding them deeper into the catacombs. As they descend, the temperature drops, and the darkness around them becomes suffocating. They switch to night vision goggles, and the once pitch-black tunnels are bathed in shades of green. Bones and burial niches line the walls, silent sentinels to the secrets buried here. Suddenly, a low growl reverberates through the catacombs, stopping them in their tracks. The team freezes, and out of the shadows ahead emerges the spirit guardian, an ancient Roman warrior, his armor flickering with ethereal blue flames. His eyes burn with an otherworldly glow as he draws a ghostly sword, the blade crackling with power. Karina steps forward, katana drawn. Her eyes lock onto the warriors as she prepares for the inevitable confrontation. "Stay back," she warns Ashley and Alex. "I'll handle him." The spirit warrior charges forward with blinding speed, and Karina meets him head-on. Their blades clash, sending a shockwave of energy through the tunnel. Karina's precise strikes are matched by the warrior's immense strength, each swing of his ghostly blade pushing her to the limit. Ashley and Alex stand ready, watching as Karina skillfully fends off the spirit. Alex observes the spirit's movements, looking for any weakness, while Ashley begins reciting a containment spell she had learned from Madame Laveau. The battle reaches its peak as Karina lands a decisive blow, severing the spirit's sword arm. The warrior staggers back, giving Ashley the opening she needs. She steps forward, chanting the spell as a shimmering bubble of energy envelops the spirit, trapping him within its bounds. Alex quickly approaches the trapped warrior, raising her hands in a peaceful gesture. "We're not here to harm you. We need the artifact you guard to prevent a greater evil from returning. Please let us help." The spirit stares at Alex for a long moment, his ethereal eyes flickering. Slowly, he lowers his remaining arm, nodding. With a gesture, he directs them to an alcove where the artifact, a small, intricately carved amulet, rests on a stone pedestal. Ashley retrieves the amulet, securing it in a protective case. "Thank you," she whispers to the spirit, watching as he fades into the shadows, his duty fulfilled at last. With the artifact in hand, the team quickly makes their way back through the winding catacombs, retracing their steps toward the church. As they reach the basement entrance, the faint sound of sirens echoes through the distance, local authorities closing in. "Time to go," Alex mutters, and the team slips out of the church and vanishes into the night, leaving no trace behind. The private plane hummed steadily as it cut through the night sky, the distant drone of the engines providing a constant background to the trio's heavy silence. The mood was tense but resolute as Alex, Karina, and Ashley sat around the small table. In front of them, resting in a protective case, was the artifact they had fought so hard to retrieve from the catacombs. The intricately carved amulet that pulsed faintly with a strange, eerie light. Its dark metal surface seemed to shift and ripple in the dim cabin light, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Ashley was the first to speak, breaking the thick silence. "We did it," she said, her voice calm but edged with the weight of their mission. "We've got the artifact, but this is only the beginning. We need to figure out our next move, how we're going to protect it, and how we're going to get the others before Black Dawn does." Alex, leaning back in her seat, rubbed a hand through her tousled hair, still processing the events in the catacombs. "I still can't wrap my head around it," she said, her voice low. "That spirit could have wiped us out if it wanted to. Why do you think it let us take the amulet without a fight?" Karina, who had been silently studying the artifact with a cautious gaze, spoke up. "Maybe it knew we weren't like the others who came for it. Madame Laveau said that Spirit was bound to protect the artifact, but it wasn't evil. I think it sensed our intentions." Her fingers traced the hilt of her katana resting on her lap, a habit she'd developed over the years in moments of contemplation. Ashley nodded, agreeing. Spirits aren't always malevolent. They follow the purpose they were given. This one saw that we're trying to prevent something far worse from happening. That's why it let us take it. She opened the protective case and lifted the amulet, careful not to disturb its delicate balance of energy. The carvings on the surface depicted scenes of warriors locked in battle, their enemies shadowy figures, shapeless and menacing. In the center, a small gemstone glowed with a pale blue light, pulsating gently with an energy that seemed alive. The closer Ashley held it, the more tangible the power became. She felt it thrumming through the air, ancient and dangerous. "This thing is potent," Ashley said, her eyes narrowing. "I can feel the energy radiating from it. If Ultranacious gets all of these artifacts, the world is in serious danger." Alex leaned forward, studying the amulet. "It's not just about keeping it safe, it's about making sure no one even knows we have it. If Black Dawn finds out, they'll come for us." Karina's eyes darkened. "They will come, Alex. We can't hide from them forever. We're already on their radar. It's only a matter of time before they realize we're after these artifacts too." Ashley closed the case with a soft click, her mind racing through their options. "We've got two choices. We either find somewhere to hide this, where no one, not even Black Dawn, can find it, or we keep it with us and go after the other artifacts ourselves." Alex immediately shook her head. "Hiding it's too risky. If we stash it somewhere, there's always a chance Black Dawn could find it before we gather the rest. At least if we keep it with us, we know where it is. We stay in control." Karina nodded in agreement. "She's right. We've come too far to start burying our leads. If we're going to stop Black Dawn, we need all the pieces. One misstep and we're finished." Ashley sighed, leaning back and rubbing her temples, the pressure of leadership weighing on her. "I agree, but we need to be smart. If we're keeping this with us, we need to make sure it's secure. No one outside of this plane can know we have it, or where we're going next." Alex grinned slightly, a glimmer of her usual rebellious spark shining through. "We've gone rogue, Ash. Secrecy is practically our brand now. But you're right, no unnecessary risks. We stay off the grid, keep moving, and trust no one." Ashley nodded firmly, her voice hardening with determination. "Then it's settled. We keep the artifact with us, and we go after the others. Fast, quiet, and under the radar. We can't afford any mistakes. We're all that stands between Black Dawn and the return of Ultranacious." Karina, tapping the hilt of her katana, considered something. "What about Gunner? Should we contact him? Let him know what's happening?" Ashley thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. If Black Dawn intercepts the message, it could jeopardize everything. Gunner's off-world looking for the Starlight Gem, and he's trusting us to handle things here. We have to trust him, too. Silence fell over the cabin once more, but this time it was a silence of shared resolve, not doubt. The stakes had never been higher. They knew the dangers ahead, the weight of the losses they had already suffered. And they knew that this mission, this fight, was about more than just revenge. It was about survival. Alex broke the silence, her voice quiet but fierce. Trinity, Des, Jewel. They all gave their lives for this. They believed in what we're doing. We can't let their sacrifices mean nothing. Karina's expression hardened. We owe it to them. We owe it to everyone Black Dawn has hurt. This ends with us. Ashley placed a steady hand on the case containing the amulet, her voice firm. We fight for the ones who can't fight anymore, for a world that has no idea what's at stake. We're the last line of defense, and we won't let them down. They quickly got to work, devising a plan to secure the artifact while keeping it hidden. Alex, ever resourceful, constructed a makeshift Faraday cage around the protective case, using the limited materials they had on the plane. The cage would block any tracking signals or magical attempts to locate the artifact, ensuring that it remained undetectable. Once the case was secure, they turned their attention to the next phase of their mission. As the plane sped through the dark skies, each member of the team took a moment to reflect on what lay ahead. The road would be long, the dangers greater than anything they had faced before, but their purpose was clear, and they were united by a shared goal: to stop Black Dawn, protect the world from Ultranacious, and honor the fallen. The hum of the engine filled the cabin once again as they settled in, their resolve stronger than ever. They would see this mission through, no matter the cost. The safe house in Traverse City, Michigan, sat nestled in a quiet, wooded area, hidden away from the world. The trees whispered in the evening breeze, the stillness broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. After the chaotic streets of Rome and the dark, claustrophobic catacombs, the trio welcomed the isolation. This was their haven now, a place of respite, but also a staging ground for what lay ahead. The modest cabin looked unassuming from the outside, but inside, it was a fortress of preparation. Gunner had left nothing to chance before embarking on his off-world mission. The main living area had been transformed into a makeshift operations center, equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance gear, a satellite communication hub, and enough weapons to rival a small army. Maps, laptops, and mission files cluttered the table, evidence of the planning that was now in their hands. As they stepped out of the car, the forest around them felt both comforting and ominous. The silence stretched, heavy and watchful. "Feels good to be somewhere that isn't crawling with eyes," Alex muttered as she glanced around the clearing. "For now, at least." Ashley nodded, her mind already shifting to the tasks at hand. Let's not get too comfortable. Inside, they wasted no time. Ashley secured the artifact beneath the floorboards, while Alex and Karina swept the cabin for any signs of tampering or surveillance. Satisfied that everything was in order, they gathered around the table where Madame Laveau's map lay unfolded, a stark reminder of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Ashley ran a hand over the map's surface, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The next artifact is somewhere here, in the Midwest. Madame Laveau mentioned it was tied to water, something like a lake or a river. If that's true, the Great Lakes might be our best bet." Alex tapped away on her laptop, pulling up historical records and supernatural sightings. "If this thing is connected to water, then we're probably looking at one of the Great Lakes or a hidden river system. I'm cross-referencing old reports with supernatural activity in the region. There have been some strange things around Sleeping Bear Dunes on Lake Michigan." Karina, arms crossed, leaned over the map, her eyes flicked over the region. "We know Black Dawn's not going to let us waltz in and take it. If they're sniffing around here, we need to know who's on the ground. We can't walk into another trap." Ashley opened a secure communication channel, tapping into the remnants of the agency's old intelligence network. Let's see what kind of chatter we can pick up about Black Dawn's movements in the Midwest. We need to be one step ahead this time. The room filled with the soft hum of electronics as they sifted through data. Alex's eyes lit up as she stumbled upon a curious series of reports. "Got something," she said, her voice edged with intrigue. "There's a local legend about a lost ship near the Sleeping Bear Dunes, supposedly cursed. People have reported ghostly apparitions, strange music, and some even say there's treasure on board." Ashley's brow lifted, intrigued. A ghost ship, hidden treasure, and a curse. That sounds like it fits the profile of the artifact. Water connection, and if the rumors are true, it's tied to something powerful. Karina gave a slight nod. If this ship is cursed, we'll need to expect more than just Black Dawn. If it's anything like the catacombs in Rome, there could be supernatural defenses guarding it. Ashley brought up a map of recent Black Dawn activity. "We've got confirmed reports of Black Dawn operatives moving through the area. They've been spotted near the dunes, likely searching for the same thing. If we're going to find this artifact, we'll need to act fast. They won't be far behind." Alex glanced over the list of sightings and frowned. "We need to be prepared for more than just Black Dawn. Local law enforcement, maybe even other supernatural groups could be involved. If the artifact's power has drawn attention, we could have more competition than we think." Karina's fingers tapped rhythmically on the table, her mind already strategizing. "We need multiple plans in place. This isn't a simple grab and go. We prepare for everything: ambushes, supernatural interference, even the curse. We can't afford to be caught off guard." The weight of the mission pressed down on them. They had one shot to get this right, and every move had to be calculated. They broke the mission down into 3 critical components. 1. Reconnaissance. Alex would lead a scouting mission to Sleeping Bear Dunes, using her tech expertise to scan for supernatural activity and signs of the ghost ship. 2. Infiltration. Karina would prepare for potential encounters with Black Dawn. Stealth and quick neutralization tactics would be key to avoiding attention. 3. Artifact retrieval. Ashley, as the leader, would oversee the operation, ensuring they secured the artifact and handled any threats. Her role would be to coordinate their actions and adjust the plan as needed. Ashley leaned over the table, her eyes moving between her teammates. "We've faced Black Dawn before. We know their methods and we know what's at stake. But this isn't just another mission. This is a race against time. We can't afford mistakes." Alex smirked, but there was a serious edge beneath it. "No pressure, right? We've done this before. Plenty of times. We stick to the plan, stay ahead of them, and we'll come out on top." Karina unsheathed her katana, checking its edge with precision. "Let's just make sure we're ready for whatever's waiting for us. Cursed ships don't go down easy." The trio went over the details one last time before calling it a night. They had a clear plan, but the uncertainties still loomed large. There was no telling what they'd face out on the dunes, but they'd be ready. Before they turned in, they secured the safe house. Alex set up perimeter alarms and motion-sensitive surveillance systems around the property. Karina double-checked their weapons and gear, ensuring everything was ready for a quick departure. Ashley made one final sweep of the artifact's hiding place, making sure it was secure. As the night deepened, each member found a quiet corner to rest, their minds already racing ahead to tomorrow's mission. The weight of what lay ahead sat heavily on their shoulders, but they were ready. Ready to fight. Ready to win. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a quiet sense of foreboding. The darkness beyond the safe house seemed to watch them, as if the world itself knew what was coming. The Sleeping Bear Dunes stretched out like a vast, rolling desert along the shoreline of Lake Michigan. The early morning mist hovered low over the sands, giving the entire landscape an eerie, ghostly quality. The dunes, beautiful and haunting, seemed to shift and breathe as the wind rolled in from the lake. Karina moved silently through this otherworldly terrain, her figure barely visible in the growing light of dawn. Dressed in dark tactical gear, Karina had set out before first light, her mission clear: gather intelligence, locate Black Dawn operatives, and ensure her team's path remained safe. Her breath was steady as she maneuvered through the forest surrounding the dunes, heading toward a hidden motorcycle she'd prepped the night before. Every step was calculated. There was no room for mistakes. "Stay sharp, Karina," she muttered to herself as she double-checked her gear. Katana, concealed blades, silenced pistol, all in place. She mounted the bike, the engine purring softly as she navigated the dirt path leading away from the safe house. The cold wind whipped at her face, but her mind was clear, focused entirely on the task at hand. It wasn't long before she reached the outskirts of the Sleeping Bear Dunes. She parked the motorcycle in a secluded spot, dismounting without a sound, and continued on foot. The shifting sands beneath her feet made the terrain difficult, but the mist and early light provided her with excellent cover. Every step was deliberate, her senses heightened, searching for any sign of movement. The terrain was treacherous, the dunes rising and falling unpredictably. Soft sand threatened to betray her position, but Karina's training took over as she moved with precision, using her katana to gently push aside any dense foliage that might give her away. As she neared the heart of the dunes, she spotted it, a small encampment nestled in a shallow valley between two large sand hills. 3 figures moved around the camp, their dark, tactical clothing nearly blending into the early morning shadows. Karina's sharp eyes caught sight of the distinctive armbands. Black Dawn. Her heart quickened, but her focus never wavered. She crouched low, scanning the camp with careful precision. One of the operatives was setting up what appeared to be a surveillance device, while the others unpacked equipment from a large duffel bag. "Looks like they're getting ready to dig in," she whispered to herself. "They're setting up a perimeter." She knew she had to get closer. Black Dawn was here for the same reason they were, to find the artifact, and she needed to learn what they knew. Keeping low to the ground, Karina circled the camp, using the terrain to her advantage. As she neared, she could hear the muffled voices of the operatives. "Are you sure this is the right place?" one operative asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "The intel we got is pretty thin. Could just be another wild goose chase." "Doesn't matter," replied the second. "Orders are orders. We're supposed to watch this area and report any unusual activity. We're not the only ones looking for the artifacts. Those rogue agents are out there somewhere, and we can't let them get ahead of us." Karina narrowed her eyes, the mention of rogue agents confirming her suspicions. Black Dawn was aware of their movements, and they were actively hunting them. She knew she couldn't stay long. Getting caught now would jeopardize everything. But she needed more information. After a few more minutes of observation, she carefully retreated to a safe distance and pulled out her secure satellite phone, dialing Ashley's direct line at the safe house. "Ashley, it's Karina," she whispered. "I've got eyes on a Black Dawn camp near the center of the dunes. 3 operatives. They're setting up surveillance and they know we're in the area." "Any signs they've found anything?" Ashley's voice crackled softly through the secure line. "Not yet," Karina replied, glancing back toward the camp. "But they're definitely watching the area. I'm going to scout further, see if I can find out what they're really looking for. If we're lucky, they haven't located the ghost ship yet." "All right, but be careful. We can't afford any more losses." "I know. I'll check in soon." Karina out. She ended the call and moved deeper into the dunes, staying low and using the thick mist and natural landscape for cover. As she ventured further from the Black Dawn camp, something caught her eye, a faint, glowing trail in the sand, barely visible in the dim light. Intrigued, Karina followed the trail, moving cautiously, every muscle tense. The trail led her to a small, hidden alcove between 2 dunes. Nestled inside was an old, weathered piece of parchment, pinned to a wooden stake. The paper looked ancient, worn by time and the elements. Carefully, Karina removed the parchment and examined it. The writing was faded, but still legible. A sailor's map marked with coordinates and a rough drawing of a ship. Strange symbols and cryptic notes lined the edges, all pointing to a location in the middle of Lake Michigan. "This is it," she whispered to herself, snapping a photo of the map with her phone. "This must be what they're looking for." Satisfied with her findings, Karina replaced the map exactly as she'd found it, ensuring it looked undisturbed. She retreated back the way she came, avoiding the Black Dawn camp and making her way to her motorcycle. As she mounted the bike and started the engine, she took one last look at the dunes. "Let's hope this gives us the edge we need," she thought, before speeding off back to the safe house. When Karina arrived back at the safe house, Alex and Ashley were waiting for her, having finished their own preparations. She quickly relayed everything she had seen and heard, including the map and the Black Dawn operatives' activities. Ashley studied the photo of the map, her expression growing more serious. "You were right. This map definitely points to the ghost ship, and if Black Dawn's after it, we'll need to move fast." "We need to get there first," Alex said, her eyes locked on the map. "If we can find the artifact before they do, we might be able to throw them off our trail for a while." Karina placed her katana on the table, leaning in. "So, what's the plan? How do we get to the coordinates without tipping off Black Dawn?" Ashley's lips curled into a determined smile. "We go by boat, under cover of night. With any luck, we'll be on the ghost ship before they even know we're there. Let's get ready to move." The team mobilized quickly, finalizing their gear and strategy. Karina's reconnaissance had given them a crucial advantage, but they all knew how fast the tides could turn. Every second counted now. As they prepared to embark on the next phase of their mission, the weight of what lay ahead settled over them. But with new intel in hand and a clear objective, they were more determined than ever to stay one step ahead of Black Dawn. In the safe house nestled deep in the woods of Traverse City, Michigan, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The team gathered around the table, their eyes fixed on the map before them. The ghost ship's coordinates lay tantalizingly close, but Karina's earlier encounter with Black Dawn operatives had complicated their mission. Every decision from here on had to be precise. Karina, her expression serious and calculating, broke the silence. "Before we head out to find the ghost ship, we need to deal with those Black Dawn operatives at the dunes. If they've set up surveillance, they'll spot us the moment we head out onto the lake. We can't afford to lead them to the artifact or get caught in a firefight." Alex, leaning against the table with her arms crossed, nodded in agreement. "She's right. If they see us, we're done. We'd have Black Dawn breathing down our necks before we even reach the ship. Worse, they could call for backup. This could go sideways fast." Ashley, the strategist, was silent for a moment, her mind working through the risks and benefits. She knew that engaging Black Dawn operatives could tip off the larger network, but leaving them unchecked could ruin their entire operation. After a few moments, she exhaled and nodded decisively. "Karina's right. We can't leave them watching our every move. If they report back, we'll lose any chance of surprise. But we need to handle this quietly, efficiently. No unnecessary risks." Karina, always pragmatic, was ready. "I'll handle it. I know their positions, and I can move in quickly. If I strike fast and hard, I can take them out before they even realize what's happening." Alex shot her a concerned glance. "You sure about this? These aren't just your average mercenaries. They're trained, like us. It's dangerous to go in alone." Karina smirked, the hint of confidence returning to her eyes. "I've taken down worse. Besides, you and Ashley need to focus on prepping the boat and mapping out the course to the ship. The sooner we deal with this, the sooner we can get the artifact." Ashley, trusting Karina's judgment and skill, nodded. "All right, Karina. You take care of the operatives. Alex and I will get everything ready. Once the threat is neutralized, meet us at the dock and we'll head for the lake." Karina gave a curt nod and began gathering her gear. "I'll be in and out. You won't even know I'm gone." As Karina prepared to leave, Alex and Ashley turned their attention to their next phase, gearing up for the mission. They gathered their stealth equipment, infrared goggles, and navigational tools for the lake. Everything had to be meticulously planned. If they were going to get to the artifact before Black Dawn, they couldn't afford any delays. Karina slipped out of the safe house and mounted her motorcycle, the engine purring softly beneath her. As she sped off toward the dunes, the weight of the mission faded, replaced by the calm clarity that came with action. This was where she excelled, moving unseen, striking fast, and eliminating threats before they could become a problem. The Sleeping Bear Dunes loomed ahead, now shrouded in the mist of the late afternoon. The fog rolling in from Lake Michigan created a ghostly haze that clung to the sand and trees, making the landscape both beautiful and foreboding. Parking her motorcycle at a safe distance, Karina continued on foot, moving with practiced stealth through the underbrush. The Black Dawn operatives had no idea she was closing in. From her vantage point on a ridge, she saw them. 3 figures still in their positions, oblivious to her presence. One operative was adjusting surveillance equipment, another was patrolling the perimeter, and the third appeared to be on a radio, likely checking in with their network. Karina's heart beat steadily as she prepared herself. She knew what needed to be done. Moving in silently, she came up behind the first operative. With one swift motion, her katana cut through the air, incapacitating him before he could react. She caught his body, lowering him gently to the ground to avoid any noise. "1 down, 2 to go," she whispered to herself. The second operative was moving closer to the camp's edge, scanning the surroundings. Karina waited for the perfect moment before lunging forward, taking him down with a precise strike to the neck. He crumpled silently, and she dragged him into the shadows, keeping his body hidden. As she approached the third and final operative, she heard his low voice over the radio. "Yeah, we're set up here. Nothing to report yet, but we're watching. You think those rogue agents are going to show?" Karina moved swiftly. Before he could finish his sentence, she was upon him, disarming him with a swift motion and knocking him unconscious with a well-placed blow. The threat was neutralized. Quickly, she searched the camp, making sure there were no hidden traps or devices left behind. She found the radio and disabled it, ensuring no communication with other Black Dawn operatives. With the area secured, she pulled out her satellite phone and contacted Ashley. "This is Karina. The operatives are neutralized. Area's clear," she reported in a low voice. "Great work, Karina," Ashley replied over the phone. "We're ready on our end. See you at the dock." With her task complete, Karina made her way back to the motorcycle, feeling a sense of satisfaction at having neutralized the threat. As she sped back through the woods, her mind shifted to the next phase. They had bought themselves some time, but the real mission, the artifact, was still ahead. Back at the safe house, Ashley and Alex were finalizing preparations when Karina arrived. She quickly relayed the details of her recon, confirming that the Black Dawn threat had been dealt with. Ashley looked at the map spread out on the table, her expression serious but resolute. "All right. With the operatives out of the way, we move fast. We'll head out by boat under cover of night. If we're lucky, we'll be on the ghost ship and have the artifact before Black Dawn even knows we're there." Alex nodded, her eyes sharp and determined. "We have to get that artifact before they do. It's our only shot." Karina set her katana on the table and leaned in. "So, what's the plan? How do we get to the coordinates without alerting anyone?" Ashley smiled slightly, a glint of determination in her eyes. "We go in silent. No one sees us coming. Let's gear up. We've got a mission to finish." With the plan in place and Karina's successful recon giving them an edge, the team mobilized swiftly. As they prepared for the next phase, the gravity of their mission hung over them, but their resolve was stronger than ever. They had cleared the first obstacle, but they all knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The cold night air hung heavily over Lake Michigan, its vast, dark waters stretching out like an endless expanse. Only the faint glow of the moon pierced the mist, casting a silver sheen across the surface. The gentle lapping of waves against the motorboat was the only sound breaking the eerie silence as the team made their way toward the ghost ship's coordinates. With the Black Dawn operatives neutralized and the area secure, Karina arrived at the secluded dock just as Alex and Ashley finished loading the last of their gear onto the small, unmarked boat. It was a vessel equipped for stealth, armed with infrared goggles, navigational tools, and essential weapons. Every detail had been planned with precision, but the air between them was tense. Everyone knew that what lay ahead was a dangerous unknown. Alex handed Karina a pair of infrared goggles as she stepped aboard. "Good work back there. We've got a clear path to the coordinates now." Karina slipped the goggles on, checking her katana strapped to her back. "Let's hope it stays that way. We're not exactly out of the woods yet." Ashley started the engine, the boat purring softly as they glided away from the dock. She kept the speed low, minimizing the noise. "You know the plan. We get to the coordinates, locate the ghost ship, retrieve the artifact, and get out. Stay sharp. We don't know what's waiting for us out there." As they moved further from the shore, the trio remained alert, eyes scanning the dark water for any signs of danger. The mist was thickening, wrapping around the boat like a veil, muting the world around them. The moon's reflection on the water was dim, and the air felt colder the further they ventured into the lake. Alex sat at the helm, navigating with a handheld GPS. "We're halfway there. So far, no signs of trouble." Karina stood at the bow, her gaze piercing the darkness. "Let's keep it that way. I don't want any surprises." The mist continued to thicken, the once still water becoming an ominous, shifting landscape of shadows and reflections. The suffocating silence was only broken by the soft hum of the boat's engine and the occasional splash of water against the hull. The air felt heavy, charged with a supernatural energy. Suddenly, the boat's radar pinged. A large object was up ahead, unmoving. Ashley immediately slowed the engine, her eyes narrowing as she peered into the thick fog. "That's not on the map. Whatever it is, it's big." Alex switched to infrared, scanning the area. "I see something. Looks like a ship, but the fog's messing with visibility." Karina, always cautious, drew her katana slightly from its sheath. "Could be the ghost ship. Could be something else. Either way, we need to approach carefully." As they drifted closer, the mist parted just enough to reveal the looming outline of a massive ancient vessel. The ship's tattered sails hung limply, its weathered hull bearing the scars of centuries at sea. Faintly etched on the side of the ship was the name The Celeste, barely legible through the layers of grime. Ashley's voice was barely a whisper. "The lost ship of the Great Lakes. It's real." They brought the motorboat alongside the decrepit vessel, securing it to the ship's side with a rope. One by one, they climbed aboard, each feeling a chill run down their spine as their boots touched the rotting wood of the deck. The air here was colder, more oppressive, as if the ship itself resented their presence. Alex swept her flashlight across the deck, keeping the beam low. "This place feels like it's stuck in time. It's wrong." Karina's senses were on high alert, every step measured. "Focus. If the legends are right, the artifact's below deck. Let's move." The creaking of the ancient ship echoed around them as they carefully navigated the decaying wood and broken beams. Every step felt like an intrusion into something long forgotten. As they descended the narrow staircase into the lower decks, the temperature plummeted further, the air thick with the stench of mildew and decay. Ashley led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Remember, the artifact is cursed. Watch for traps. We don't know what kind of defenses are down here." Alex, her pistol drawn, tried to lighten the mood. "Just another day at the office, right?" At the bottom of the stairs, they were greeted by a faint, ghostly glow coming from a nearby room. The flickering light cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The team exchanged wary glances before approaching the source, weapons ready. Inside the small, dimly lit room was an old wooden chest, partially open. The glow came from within, a pulsing, otherworldly light that seemed to sync with their heartbeats. Ashley stepped forward, her voice barely audible. That's it, the artifact. Karina, ever cautious, held her katana at the ready. Wait, something's wrong. Look around. The room was thick with tension as they realized they were not alone. Slowly, faint figures began to materialize in the shadows, ghostly sailors, their gaunt faces and glowing blue eyes staring at the intruders. Their presence was silent, but their intent was clear. Alex's voice was a whisper. I guess the curse is real. Any bright ideas? Before they could react, one of the spectral figures stepped forward. A captain, judging by his tattered uniform and commanding posture. He raised a ghostly hand, pointing at Ashley. His voice was cold and hollow. You seek the cursed treasure of the Celeste. None who touch it leave this place alive. Ashley, trying to keep her voice steady, responded. We're not here to take it for ourselves. We're here to protect it. If it falls into the wrong hands, the living will suffer. The captain's expression did not change. His voice, icy and final, cut through the air. The artifact belongs to the dead. Those who seek it must join us in eternal servitude. Karina stepped forward, katana raised. We don't have time for this. Stand down, or we'll make you. The ghostly sailors began to close in, their forms becoming more solid and menacing. The air grew colder, and a mournful wail echoed through the ship, as if the very vessel was protesting their presence. Ashley raised her flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark mist. Alex, cover me! Karina, keep them back! Alex fired warning shots into the air, the sound momentarily halting the ghost's advance. Karina moved swiftly, her katana slicing through the nearest ghost. Though the blade passed through the apparition, the spirit recoiled in pain, its form flickering and fading. They're vulnerable to physical attacks, Karina muttered. We can keep them at bay. Seizing the moment, Ashley dashed toward the chest. She carefully lifted the artifact, a small, ornate compass. Its needle spun wildly, and its surface glowed with the same ghostly light that filled the room. Alex, still firing intermittently to keep the spirits at a distance, shouted, Got it! Ashley nodded, securing the compass in a protective case. Got it, let's move! With the artifact in hand, they rushed back up the stairs, the ghostly sailors close behind. The ship groaned around them, the walls warping and shifting as if trying to trap them. The mist grew thicker, choking the air and making it harder to breathe. Karina slashed at the ghosts, her movements fluid and precise. Keep moving! Don't let them corner us! Ashley led the way, her flashlight carving a path through the fog. We're almost there. As they reached the deck, the ghosts abruptly stopped, retreating into the shadows. The team wasted no time clambering back down to their motorboat and untying the rope. Alex started the engine, and they sped away from the Celeste, the ghost ship vanishing into the mist as if it had never existed. Once they were a safe distance away, the trio took a moment to catch their breath. Their hearts still pounded, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Ashley examined the compass in the pale moonlight. We got it, and we're still breathing. I'd call that a win. Karina sheathed her katana, nodding. But this thing's dangerous. Cursed. We need to figure out what to do with it, fast. Alex glanced back at the fading silhouette of the Celeste. Something tells me this is just the beginning. We've got the artifact, but Black Dawn won't be far behind. The boat sliced through the dark water as they sped back toward the shore, the wind whipping against their faces. The team had won a significant battle tonight, but they knew the war was far from over. The team's motorboat drifted silently toward the dock near the safe house, the night's tension still thick in the air. The boat cut through the dark waters of Lake Michigan, its faint hum barely audible above the gentle lapping of waves. The cursed compass they had retrieved from the Celeste weighed heavily in their minds, its malevolent energy palpable even from within its protective case. Once the boat was secured, Alex, Karina, and Ashley disembarked swiftly, moving in near silence through the dense woods. They stayed close to the shadows, avoiding open ground, their senses heightened after the ghostly encounter on the lake. The air was colder now, and the woods seemed to hold its breath as they approached the cabin. Karina led the way, her katana drawn and ready. She moved with fluid precision, opening the door to the safe house and stepping inside without a sound. Alex and Ashley followed closely behind, their weapons drawn, scanning every corner for signs of intrusion. The cabin looked as they had left it, but they weren't taking any chances. After a thorough sweep of the small house, the tension finally eased. They confirmed they were alone. Ashley locked the door behind them and turned to the others. "All right, looks like we're safe for now. Let's get the artifact secured and figure out what comes next." Alex placed the cursed compass on the table and the team gathered around, eyes fixed on the eerie object. The needle spun erratically, as if sensing something unseen. A faint glow emanated from the compass's surface, casting an unnatural light in the dimly lit room. The temperature seemed to drop around it, and an oppressive silence filled the space. Karina narrowed her eyes at the object, her voice low. "This thing, it doesn't belong in our world. We need to contain it before it causes more problems." Ashley moved quickly, retrieving a lead-lined box from one of the secure storage compartments built into the cabin. "Agreed. We don't know the full extent of its curse, and we're not about to find out." With care, Ashley placed the compass inside the box and sealed it shut. The ghostly light dimmed, and the room's temperature returned to normal. Alex let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That should keep it from doing whatever it does," Alex said, though her voice betrayed her lingering unease. Ashley nodded, placing the box on a reinforced shelf hidden behind a false wall. "It'll have to do for now, but we can't keep collecting cursed artifacts. Sooner or later, we won't be able to control them. We need a long-term plan." They regrouped around the table, exhaustion settling in but their minds still sharp. The events of the night had drained them, but they had no time to rest. Black Dawn was likely still hunting them, and the artifacts were too dangerous to leave unguarded. Ashley leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. 2 artifacts down, but there are still more out there. We have no idea how far ahead, or behind, Black Dawn is. Alex crossed her arms, leaning against the table. "And we're running thin on resources. We can't keep doing this alone. We need information, supplies, and more people on our side." Karina's face was serious as she sat across from Ashley. "We need Gunnar. He needs to know what we've found and what we're up against. If anyone can help us figure out the next steps, it's him." Ashley nodded, knowing Karina was right. "We've been on our own for too long. We need his guidance." She stood and moved toward the secure satellite phone in the back room, dialing Gunnar's private line, a direct connection to him wherever he was off-world. The phone rang, but no one picked up. Ashley's heart sank slightly as Gunnar's voice came through the static-laden line. "Gunnar, over the phone. This is Gunnar. Leave a message." Ashley closed her eyes for a moment, then responded. "Gunnar, it's Ashley. We've got a situation. We managed to retrieve one of the artifacts, but it's cursed. Black Dawn's on our tail, and we need guidance. Get back to us when you can." She hung up the phone and returned to the main room, her expression grim. "No response," Ashley said, her voice tight. "Gunnar's still off-world. I left a message, but for now we're on our own. We need to keep the artifacts hidden, and no one touches them unless it's absolutely necessary." Alex's eyes flickered with understanding as she nodded. "So we keep doing what we've been doing. Find the artifacts, stay one step ahead of Black Dawn, and hope Gunnar gets back in time." Karina's face remained serious, her jaw tight. "It's going to get harder. The more artifacts we find, the more desperate Black Dawn will become. They'll stop at nothing to get their hands on these things. Ashley returned to the table, pulling out the map and notes they had collected from Madame Laveau. Then we can't waste time. We need to stay ahead of them. The only advantage we have is speed. For the next few hours, the team studied the map, cross-referencing locations and notes to identify where the next artifact might be. Each moment was a reminder of how close they were to danger, yet they pressed on, driven by the gravity of their mission. Alex pointed to a spot on the map, her eyes narrowing. Here, near a small town in Montana, there's a place called the Cave of Shadows. It's mentioned in some of the older notes we found. Could be our next target. Ashley marked the location, already planning the next move. We'll need to gather intel on the area, figure out what we're up against. Karina stood and stretched her legs. I'll check our gear, make sure we're ready. We might have to leave fast if Black Dawn's closer than we think. As they continued finalizing their plan, the weight of the mission pressed down on them. Exhausted, outnumbered, and with cursed artifacts in their possession, they knew the road ahead was treacherous. Yet, their resolve only grew stronger. The first rays of dawn began to filter through the trees outside the cabin, casting pale light across the map on the table. They knew they were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting to keep a dangerous ancient power from falling into the wrong hands. And as they prepared for the next leg of their journey, they were ready for whatever came next. The first light of dawn filtered through the dense trees surrounding the safe house, casting long shadows over the ground as the team gathered in their makeshift operations center. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with focus. After a few hours of rest and a quick meal, Alex, Karina, and Ashley sat around the table, ready to delve into the research for their next target, the mysterious Cave of Shadows in Montana. The name alone promised danger, and they knew time was not on their side. Alex opened her laptop, connecting to a secure network to begin her deep dive. Let's see what we can find. If this cave is anything like the Celeste, we need to be prepared for a lot more than just a spooky name. Karina, ever practical, pulled a few dusty books from a hidden shelf, setting them on the table with a thud. These books were left here by Gunnar for a reason. He thought they might help with research on supernatural hotspots in the US. Maybe we'll find something useful about the Cave of Shadows. Ashley, already on edge, sat down with a notebook. Let's move fast. The less time we spend here, the better. We need to get ahead of Black Dawn before they catch up. As Alex started combing through encrypted databases and online archives, she began uncovering scraps of information. The Cave of Shadows was steeped in folklore, whispered about in local legends, and linked to strange disappearances. It was isolated, surrounded by dense forests and rugged, unforgiving terrain, the kind of place people avoided for good reason. Alex leaned in closer to her screen, reading through the accounts. This place has a history. People have been going missing there for decades, maybe longer. Locals say it's cursed, that anyone who ventures inside doesn't come back. Ashley jotted this down, her face tightening. That sounds exactly like the kind of place we'd find an artifact. What else? There's talk of shadows that move on their own, even when there's no light, Alex continued, scrolling through the records. And there's this one old story about a group of settlers from the 1800s. They were last seen heading toward the cave during a storm, looking for shelter. They were never seen again. Karina flipped through one of the old books she had retrieved, her eyes narrowing as she scanned a passage. I've got something here too. It talks about places where the veil between our world and the supernatural is thin. The Cave of Shadows is listed as a site of great spiritual significance, and it warns of dark entities that guard whatever's hidden there. They cross-referenced the information, slowly piecing together a clearer picture of what they were about to face. The cave seemed to be a gateway, a place where the boundary between dimensions was fragile, allowing dark forces to seep into the physical world. If an artifact was hidden there, it would be well protected, by both the cave itself and the things that called it home. Ashley tapped her pen against the table, thinking out loud. If the cave is a weak point between worlds, it makes sense for an artifact to be hidden there. But if there are dark entities guarding it, we need to be ready for anything. Alex nodded, her eyes scanning the notes. We'll need to go in fully armed, no question. There's no telling what kind of creatures or traps we might run into down there. Karina's expression hardened. And we need to make sure we're not followed. If Black Dawn catches wind of this, they'll bring everything they have. We can't let them get the jump on us. Shifting their focus, they turned to potential threats and obstacles. Alex pulled up local wildlife records, supernatural sightings, and any known Black Dawn activities in the region. Nothing recent from Black Dawn in Montana, Alex said, her fingers tapping rapidly on the keys. But that doesn't mean they're not around. We need to stay alert. I wouldn't be surprised if they're watching us from a distance. Karina leaned forward, already calculating their approach. We'll need to set up a perimeter around the cave as soon as we get there. If Black Dawn shows up, we need to be ready to defend our position. Ashley flipped through another report, her brow furrowing. There's something else. Some of these old records mention sightings of strange creatures in the woods near the cave, shadowy figures moving between the trees, and one report describes a creature that's half man, half wolf. Alex raised an eyebrow. Werewolves? Not exactly, Ashley replied, shaking her head. The descriptions are too vague, but it sounds like some kind of guardian or spirit tied to the cave, maybe a defense mechanism to keep intruders out. With the pieces of the puzzle coming together, the team began to outline their approach. They would need to move quickly and quietly, avoiding detection by Black Dawn and any curious locales. But even more pressing was the supernatural threat, the guardians, curses, and spirits that awaited them in the Cave of Shadows. Ashley stood, her voice steady as she laid out the plan. We drive as close as we can to the cave. Then we go on foot. We'll set up a perimeter around the entrance to make sure we're not followed. Karina, you take point. Alex, you'll handle tech and surveillance. I'll cover the rear and secure our escape route. Alex began packing her laptop and gear, her fingers moving quickly. I'll make sure we're loaded with the right tech. We'll need night vision, thermal imaging, and maybe some EMP grenades in case we run into anything unexpected. Karina double-checked her katana, her expression focused. If we're going to do this, we do it right. No mistakes. Ashley glanced at the map one more time, her determination palpable. Then it settled. We move fast, hit hard, and get out. Let's get ready. We leave in an hour. The team spent the next hour packing their gear, double-checking weapons, and reviewing the plan. There was no room for error. They had a long drive ahead of them, and once they reached Montana, there would be no turning back. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled light through the trees, they gathered one last time before departing. Exhausted but resolute, they knew the mission was growing more dangerous with each artifact they retrieved. But there was no alternative. They had to stay ahead of Black Dawn, or risk losing everything. The weight of their task settled heavily on their shoulders as they moved out, knowing full well that the Cave of Shadows would test them like never before. The last of the gear was packed into the unmarked SUV as dawn broke over the safe house in Traverse City. The team moved efficiently, driven by the urgency of their mission. The road ahead was long and filled with uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. They had one target: the Cave of Shadows. Alex climbed into the driver's seat, starting the engine and checking the GPS. All right, it's going to be a long haul to Montana. We'll stick to the back roads as much as possible, stay off the grid. Everyone ready? Karina tossed her gear into the back seat, settling in with her katana within reach. Ready. Let's roll. Ashley slid into the front passenger seat, unfolding her maps and notes once more. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's make sure we don't waste any time. The SUV rumbled to life as they pulled away from the safe house, leaving behind the relative safety it provided. The morning sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the winding roads as they headed west. The further they drove, the more isolated the landscape became, the small towns and open plains swallowing them in their vast emptiness. Every mile took them deeper into the unknown, closer to the cave, and the danger it promised. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere was a mix of focus and preparation. Karina sat quietly, mentally rehearsing the various threats they might encounter, both human and supernatural. She'd learned from past missions that it was the unexpected dangers that were most deadly. She wasn't about to let her guard down. Alex kept her eyes on the road, glancing occasionally at the GPS. "We're making good time, but we'll need to stop soon for fuel and supplies. We need to be stocked for whatever we find in Montana." Ashley nodded, tracing their route on the map. "There's a small town coming up. We can stop there, refuel, and grab what we need. Water, food, medical supplies, everything we might need for this cave." The SUV rolled into a dusty, quiet town a couple of hours later. The place looked like it hadn't changed in decades, with old brick buildings lining the main street and a single gas station on the outskirts. Alex pulled in, keeping the engine running as they surveyed the area. "Let's keep this quick," she said, stepping out to refuel the car. Ashley and Karina scanned their surroundings, wary of drawing too much attention. The fewer eyes on them, the better. Inside the gas station, Alex paid for the gas and picked up supplies, keeping a low profile. As she approached the counter, the cashier gave her a curious look, clearly not used to seeing new faces. "You folks just passing through?" the cashier asked, her voice tinged with local suspicion. Alex forced a polite smile. "Long road trip. Just needed to stretch our legs." The cashier nodded, ringing up her purchases. "Be careful out there. Weird things happen around these parts, especially if you're heading west. Folks see things at night, lights in the sky, shadows in the woods." Alex's smile tightened, keeping her tone casual. "Thanks for the heads up." She returned to the SUV, loading the supplies into the back. "Cashier mentioned strange things happening around here. Lights in the sky, shadows in the woods. Sounds like we're heading in the right direction." Ashley raised an eyebrow, glancing back at the quiet town. "Strange things always happen where we're going." Back on the road, the landscape slowly transformed. The forests grew denser, the open plains stretched on endlessly, and the mountains in the distance loomed closer. Each mile felt like a step deeper into isolation, the small towns becoming fewer and farther between. The silence between them grew, not from tension, but from the weight of what lay ahead. Alex drove steadily, her eyes flicking between the GPS and the road. "We're getting close. GPS says the cave's near a place called Shadow Valley. We'll need to go off-road soon." Karina checked her watch, noting the approaching dusk. "Good timing. It'll be dark by the time we reach the cave. Perfect cover for us." Ashley reviewed the map one last time. "We need to be in and out quickly. No lingering. We don't know what's inside, and we can't afford to be caught off guard. Everyone stays sharp." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape into a deep, foreboding twilight. Alex turned off the main road, guiding the SUV onto a narrow, rocky path that wound its way into the mountains. The trees thickened, their twisted branches reaching across the sky like skeletal fingers, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out toward the vehicle. After an hour of navigating the rugged path, the team reached a small clearing at the base of a steep hill. The GPS indicated that they were close to the Cave of Shadows, though no visible entrance was in sight. The forest around them felt suffocatingly silent, as though the woods themselves were watching. "We go the rest of the way on foot," Karina said as she stepped out of the SUV, her senses already heightened. "We need to stay quiet. We don't know what, or who, might be out here." Ashley grabbed her pack, slinging it over her shoulder. "Agreed, let's get this done." The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the woods, the oppressive silence broken only by the occasional crunch of their boots on the rocky ground. The trees were thick, their twisted shapes casting dark, impenetrable shadows. Each step seemed to draw them further from the world they knew, closer to something ancient and dangerous. Night vision goggles on, the team navigated the increasingly rough terrain. Karina led the way, moving silently but efficiently. The forest seemed alive with unseen movement, the wind rustling through the leaves like whispers in the dark. Every rustle, every flicker of movement in the corner of their eyes kept them on edge, but they pressed forward. As they neared the entrance to the Cave of Shadows, the temperature plummeted further, the air now so cold it seemed to bite at their skin. A thick sense of foreboding settled over them, a weight that made each step heavier, each breath more laboured. Ashley slowed the group, her voice a low whisper. "We're close. Stick together and keep your eyes open. If something goes wrong, we regroup and get out. No artifact is worth losing anyone over." Alex nodded, adjusting her gear as they pressed forward. "Let's find this thing and get out before anything finds us." Karina tightened her grip on her katana, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Whatever's in there, we'll deal with it. We've faced worse." They moved as one, their focus razor-sharp as they neared the entrance of the cave. The mouth of the cave seemed to materialize out of the dark, a gaping maw cut into the side of the mountain, framed by jagged rocks and dense vegetation. The cold air that drifted out from inside was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something older, more sinister. As they stood before the entrance, they shared a final glance, each of them knowing they were about to step into the unknown. But they were ready, ready to face whatever lay within the Cave of Shadows. Deep within the heart of the Cave of Shadows, the air felt thick with an ancient magic that pulsed through the stone walls. Moisture dripped from above, shimmering faintly with an unnatural light as it collected in shallow pools. The cavernous space was silent, save for the strange echo of their footsteps as Ashley, Alex, and Karina moved cautiously through the labyrinth of jagged passages. Each sound was amplified, creating an unsettling symphony of noise that made it impossible to tell if they were alone or being followed. Ashley took the lead, flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness as her body tensed with the weight of the mission. "Stay close," she whispered, barely audible above the distant drip of water. Her voice was tight, filled with the tension that came with nearing their target. "We're almost there. The artifact should be just up ahead." Behind her, Alex moved carefully, one hand resting on her sidearm. Her breaths were shallow, each step calculated to avoid drawing attention. "I don't like this," she muttered under her breath, eyes darting around. "Feels like something's watching us." Karina brought up the rear, katana drawn, senses heightened as she scanned the shifting shadows. She felt the same foreboding that gripped Alex, but they were too deep now to turn back. "Just keep moving," Karina whispered. "We need to grab the artifact and get out before we're noticed." The narrow corridor opened into a vast chamber, so large that the ceiling disappeared into the darkness above. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a small, glowing orb. It pulsed softly with an otherworldly light, casting eerie shadows that danced across the cavern walls. The air around the orb shimmered with unseen energy. Ashley raised her hand, signaling for the team to stop. "There it is," she whispered, her voice laced with suspicion. "The artifact. But something's wrong. It's too quiet." Alex's eyes narrowed as she scanned the cavern. "Where are the guards? There's no way it's just sitting there, unprotected." Karina's grip on her katana tightened, her instincts screaming that they had walked into something far more dangerous. "Stay sharp. We're not alone." As if on cue, the shadows around them began to move, coalescing into dark humanoid figures with glowing red eyes. The shadow wraiths emerged from the darkness, their forms fluid and silent, surrounding the team and cutting off every exit. Ashley raised her flashlight, shining it toward the nearest wraith, but the light seemed to pass right through the creature, leaving it unaffected. "Damn it! Shadow wraiths," she hissed, backing up her knife at the ready. "Get ready. This is about to get ugly." Karina lunged forward, her katana slashing through the nearest wraith. The blade cut through the shadowy form, but it reformed instantly, the wraith's glowing eyes flaring as it closed in again. "Physical attacks aren't working. We need another plan," she called out, frustration in her voice. The wraiths attacked relentlessly, their elongated claw-like hands swiping at the team with terrifying speed. Every strike sent ripples of dark energy through the air, their shadowy forms difficult to target. Alex fired her sidearm, the bullets passing through the creatures as if they were made of smoke. "Damn it!" Alex cursed, ducking under another swipe. "These things are invulnerable. How do we fight something we can't hit?" "We need to get to the artifact," Ashley shouted, slashing at the wraiths with her knife. "It's controlling them. If we destroy it, they might disappear." Karina moved to cover them as they fought their way toward the pedestal. One of the wraiths lunged at Alex, its claws slashing across her side. She let out a pained cry, collapsing to the ground as blood seeped through her gear. "Alex!" Ashley yelled, rushing to her side and driving the wraith back with her knife. "Hang in there, we're not leaving you." Karina deflected another attack, the weight of the situation bearing down on them. "We're out of time! Ashley, do something!" Desperate, Ashley reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, intricately carved talisman, the one given to her by Ileana Vale, the elf mage. The talisman was meant to summon Ileana in times of dire need. Ashley held it high, her voice filled with urgency. "Ileana, we need you. Now." The talisman flared to life, glowing with an intense, blinding light. The air around them crackled with energy, and the wraiths recoiled, their hisses filling the chamber as they shielded themselves from the radiant glow. The team held their ground as the light intensified, fighting to hold off the wraiths. Just when it seemed they would be overwhelmed, a swirling portal of light opened in the center of the chamber, casting the cave in a brilliant golden glow. Clara Olsen stepped through the portal, wearing her enchanted cloak and wielding a glowing staff of light. Her eyes blazed with determination, and in her wake followed Bravo and Omega, their powerful forms leaping into the fray. Clara raised her staff, unleashing a beam of radiant light that cut through the shadow wraiths, their forms dissolving into mist as they shrieked and vanished. "Hold on!" she called out, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We've got this!" Ashley breathed a sigh of relief, gripping Alex's hand. "Clara, thank God!" The battle shifted rapidly. Clara's magic burned through the wraiths, while Bravo and Omega moved with deadly precision, tearing through the remaining shadowy figures. Karina fought beside them, her katana now glowing with a magical light that allowed her to cut through the wraiths with ease. Together, they pushed toward the pedestal. Clara, sensing the source of the wraith's power, raised her staff and began chanting in a language older than the cavern itself. The orb on the pedestal vibrated violently, cracks appearing along its surface as the magic within it began to break apart. With a final surge of energy, the orb shattered, releasing a shockwave of light that banished the remaining wraiths. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting as the last of the shadows faded into nothingness. But the victory was short-lived. The walls of the cave trembled, cracks snaking across the stone as the cavern began to collapse around them. "Ashley, we need to go. Now!" Clara shouted, raising her staff to cast a teleportation spell. The air shimmered, and in a flash of light, the team was pulled from the crumbling cave. They reappeared in the safety of the training facility's medical wing, the familiar sterile lights and bustling staff replacing the chaos of the cave. The medics rushed to Alex's side as she was gently lowered onto a gurney. Her face was pale, her breaths shallow as the medics worked quickly to stabilize her. "She's hurt bad," Ashley said, her voice tight with worry. "Do what you can." Clara watched quietly, exhaustion setting in. Bravo and Omega, though tired, sat close by, their eyes alert. Clara knelt by Bravo, gently stroking her fur. "You did great," she whispered, her voice soft. "We're still a pack." Ashley turned to Clara, gratitude in her eyes. "You saved us, Clara. I don't know what we would have done without you." Clara gave a tired smile, her eyes serious. "We're in this together, Ashley. We always protect our own." As the medics worked to save Alex, the team reflected on the battle they had barely survived. The artifact was destroyed, the wraiths banished, but the war was far from over. The training facility buzzed with activity, medics rushing around Alex's still form as they worked to stabilize her. The bright lights of the medical wing illuminated the chaos. Blood-stained gauze, syringes, and equipment scattered about in the frantic effort to save her. Ashley, Karina, Clara, Bravo, and Omega stood nearby, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion after the harrowing battle in the Cave of Shadows. Suddenly, the doors to the medical wing swung open and Jewel Blick entered, her red hair pulled back, determination hardening her features. She moved with the confidence of someone who had faced countless medical crises before, taking in the situation at a glance. Without missing a beat, Jewel stepped to Alex's side, her voice calm yet urgent as she directed the medics. "We need to stabilize her now. Get an IV in and someone hand me a trauma kit. She's losing too much blood." As the medics scrambled to follow her orders, Jewel focused on Alex's wounds. Her hazel eyes narrowed as she assessed the damage, her hands moving swiftly and skillfully. She cleaned and stitched the deep gashes, her expertise evident in every movement. "Stay with us, Alex. We're not letting you go." Clara watched from a distance, concern heavy in her chest. Alex was more than just a teammate. She was vital to their mission, their bond. Clara silently offered a prayer to Eliana Vale, hoping the elf mage's magic could lend strength to Jewel's hands. The minutes dragged on, feeling like hours. Jewel worked tirelessly, applying pressure to Alex's wounds, suturing the deepest cuts, and administering painkillers and antibiotics. All the while, the team stood by, helpless, unable to do anything but hope. Ashley remained close, her eyes never leaving Alex's pale face, her fists clenched at her sides, the frustration and helplessness gnawing at her. "Come on, Alex," she whispered, barely audible. "You're tougher than this. You fought through worse. Don't you dare leave us." Karina placed a hand on Ashley's shoulder, her voice steady despite the grim situation. "Jewel's got this. If anyone can pull her through, it's Jewel." Jewel's hands never wavered, even as the pressure mounted. Her years of experience as a trauma nurse shone through in every action, her dedication to saving Alex driving her forward. She monitored vital signs, adjusted her treatment, and kept the medics focused and calm in the chaos. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jewel stepped back, her face flushed with exertion but showing a glimmer of hope. She wiped her brow and took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on Alex, who now lay still but stable. "Her vitals are steady," Jewel said, her voice calm but filled with cautious relief. "She's not out of danger yet, but she's stable for now. We'll keep monitoring her closely." Ashley let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging as the weight of the situation finally eased. "Thank you, Jewel," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved her." Jewel gave a small nod, her expression softening. "She's strong. She'll make it through. But it'll take time for her to fully recover." Clara stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Jewel's arm. "Thank you, Jewel. We couldn't have done this without you." Jewel smiled faintly, though her eyes still carried the weight of the ordeal. "We're a team. We look out for each other. Always." Over the next few hours, Alex remained under the careful watch of Jewel and the medics, her condition stable but fragile. The team took turns keeping vigil by her side, offering quiet support as Alex began the slow process of healing. Clara and Omega stayed close, their presence a comfort to their injured comrade. Clara used her staff of light to channel soothing energy, easing Alex's pain and accelerating her recovery. Bravo remained by Ashley, her amber eyes filled with quiet empathy as she sensed the emotional strain on her human pack. She stayed close, a comforting presence amid the uncertainty. As the days passed and Alex's condition improved, it became clear that Clara and Omega's time in this realm was coming to an end. For now. Their mission had been to assist the team, but they had learned much and had more to study back in the magical realm under Eliana Vale's guidance. Clara approached Jewel, who was resting after another long shift. Omega padded beside her, his amber eyes watching Jewel with curiosity and affection. "Jewel," Clara began softly, not wanting to break the quiet, "thank you for everything. You've been incredible. For Alex. For all of us. Omega and I need to return to the magical realm to continue our training. But we'll be back when we're needed." Jewel nodded, understanding reflected in her tired but grateful eyes. "You've become a valuable part of this team, Clara. You and Omega. We'll miss you, but I know you have important work to do. Just promise you'll both stay safe." Clara smiled warmly and placed a hand on Jewel's shoulder. "We will. And we'll be back before you know it." Omega gave a soft bark, nuzzling Jewel's hand in his own quiet farewell. Jewel chuckled softly, scratching behind his ears. "Take care of her, Omega. She needs you." With a final nod to the team, Clara and Omega stepped toward the shimmering portal that had appeared in the corner of the room. The soft golden light enveloped them, and in a flash, they were gone, returning to the mystical realm. With their departure, the team's focus shifted fully to Alex's recovery and preparing for the next leg of their mission. More challenges awaited them, and they needed to be ready. Bravo remained by Ashley's side, offering silent companionship in a way that only the bond between them could. Jewel continued her tireless care for Alex, checking her vitals, adjusting medications, and offering the same level of dedication that had saved her in the first place. In the quiet moments between tasks, the team reflected on what they had been through, the dangers they had faced, and the bonds that had grown stronger because of it. They knew that together they could face whatever came next, whether it was the darkness that haunted them, the artifacts they sought to destroy, or the enemies closing in around them. They had each other, and that was enough to face anything. The door to the common area swung open, and Sarah Adams entered with the quiet command of someone who had seen too much but still carried herself with a fierce purpose. Her sharp blue eyes swept over the room, assessing the familiar faces of her teammates. She moved with the practiced ease of a seasoned operative, her prosthetic leg barely noticeable beneath her tactical pants. Though the soft mechanical sound it made as she adjusted her pace was a constant reminder of the scars left behind. Desera's face was etched with concern, but she wore her stoicism like armor. As her gaze landed on Ashley, Karina, and Jewel, who were gathered around a table, their faces worn with exhaustion but tinged with relief over Alex's stabilization, she approached. "How's Alex doing?" Desera asked, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed the worry she tried to suppress. "I heard she took a pretty bad hit during the last mission." Jewel, ever calm under pressure, looked up and offered a soft smile. "She's stable, thanks to the medics, and quick field work. She's still in recovery, but she's a fighter. We're not losing her." Desera nodded, her expression hardening into a mask of resolve. She turned her attention to Ashley. "Good to hear. I came by to check on everyone, and to see if there's been any word from Gunnar. It's been radio silence for too long. I'm getting concerned." Ashley exchanged a glance with Karina, her face darkening. "We haven't heard from him either, Des. He went off-world to find the Starlight Gem, but there's been nothing since. It's been weeks." "That's not like him," Desera muttered, frowning as her military instincts kicked in. "Gunnar wouldn't just go dark without a reason. We might need to start preparing for the worst." Just in case. Karina nodded, her expression grim. We've got Black Dawn still out there, Gunnar missing, and Alex recovering. We can't afford any more surprises. We need to stay ready for whatever comes next. Desiree sat down, adjusting her prosthetic leg with a soft click. I'll reach out to my contacts, see if anyone's heard anything about his whereabouts. But in the meantime, we need to be ready for a fight, especially if Black Dawn's still on the move. Jewel took a deep breath, her hazel eyes thoughtful as she looked at Ashley. I've been thinking. I know you wanted me back in the field, but after everything that happened with the attack on the agency, I'm not sure I'm ready for that again. Ashley reached out, placing a comforting hand on Jewel's arm. I understand what you've been through. No one expects you to jump back into the fray. You're doing so much here, and we need you in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. Jewel's lips curved into a grateful smile. Thank you, Ashley. I'll always support the team. I just need to find my place again. For now, that's here, keeping everyone in one piece. Desiree, her tone warm despite the hard edge in her voice, nodded in agreement. Jewel, you've saved more lives than we can count. You're just as critical to this team as anyone out there in the field. As the group fell into a comfortable silence, Beta padded into the room, her sleek grey coat shimmering in the soft light. Her amber eyes immediately sought out Ashley, her bond with her human partner palpable in every step she took. Beta moved directly to Ashley's side, her protective nature as much a part of her as her loyalty. Ashley smiled down at her spirit wolf, running a hand through Beta's soft fur. You're always on time, Beta. Looks like you're stuck with me for a while longer. Beta gave a soft, affirming bark, nuzzling Ashley's hand. The silent exchange spoke volumes about their bond, unbreakable and filled with trust. Desiree watched the interaction, a rare smile softening her features. Beta's not going anywhere, and that's a good thing. We need all the help we can get. Ashley nodded, her eyes resolute. We keep moving forward. For Gunnar, for Alex, for everyone depending on us. We'll keep fighting. The rest of the afternoon was spent in planning and preparation. Desiree took command of the training grounds, drilling the recruits and ensuring they were ready for whatever might come. Her leadership was critical, especially with Gunnar gone. She pushed the team hard, reminding them of the threats that loomed, but always balanced it with her unique brand of mentorship. Tough but fair. Jewel remained in the medical wing, keeping a close watch on Alex's recovery. She worked tirelessly, ensuring that Alex's condition improved steadily. Her presence was a constant source of reassurance, not just for Alex, but for the entire team. The knowledge that Jewel was there to pick up the pieces after every battle brought a quiet sense of security. Meanwhile, Ashley and Karina focused on gathering intel. They combed through every shred of information they could find on Gunnar's mission and Black Dawn's movements. But the more they dug, the more they realized how little they knew about what was happening off-world. It left them feeling vulnerable, but not defeated. Beta stayed close to Ashley, always alert. She sensed the weight of responsibility that had settled on her partner's shoulders and offered quiet comfort. Her presence was a reminder that no matter how dark things got, the pack stood strong together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the training facility, the team gathered outside. They stood together watching the sky darken as the first stars appeared. The mood was one of quiet reflection, but there was also a palpable sense of determination. Despite the uncertainties they had survived, they had each other, and that meant something. Desiree turned to face the team, her voice steady and filled with resolve. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I know we're ready. We'll find Gunnar, we'll take down Black Dawn, and we'll protect everything we've built here. Ashley's gaze was fierce, her voice strong as she echoed Desiree's words. We fight together, and we win together. Always. As the team stood side by side, the darkness surrounding them felt less oppressive. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had survived. And with their shared mission, the bond they had forged through blood, sweat, and sacrifice, they knew they would survive again. Together they would fight for Gunnar, for Alex, and for the world they were sworn to protect. And they would not back down. 4 days had passed since the intense mission at the Cave of Shadows. In that time, the team had used the quiet of the training facility to rest, recover, and sharpen their skills. The atmosphere was one of anticipation, calm before a storm they knew was coming. Each member prepared in their own way, but all shared the same readiness for the inevitable confrontation with Black Dawn. Alex, now recovered under Jules' watchful care, had spent the last few days gradually building her strength. The deep wounds she had sustained were healing, leaving only faint scars as reminders of the battle. Today, as she stepped onto the training grounds in full tactical gear, she felt ready, more than ready, to rejoin her team. Her determined gaze swept across the grounds, locking onto her teammates. Ashley noticed her first, a wide smile spreading across her face. "Alex, it's great to see you up and about. How are you feeling?" Alex nodded, offering a small smile of her own. "Better, stronger. I'm ready to get back to work. I can't stand sitting on the sidelines any longer." Karina approached, her katana casually slung over her shoulder. The relief in her voice was barely masked by her usual stoicism. "It's good to have you back. We've missed you." Jules, standing nearby, gave Alex a pat on the back, her voice filled with quiet pride. "I knew you'd bounce back, but just take it easy, okay? We need you in one piece." Alex chuckled softly, her eyes flashing with determination. "Don't worry, Jewel. I'm not going to overdo it. I'm just ready to pull my weight again." As the team gathered around, the atmosphere shifted from casual reunion to something heavier. Desiree Adams stepped forward, her striking blue eyes scanning the group with a sense of gravity. She carried with her an encrypted device, a small, unassuming object that would change the course of their day. Clearing her throat, Desiree addressed the group, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "I've got news from Gunnar. He reached out last night." The room went still, every member turning toward her with wide eyes. After weeks of silence, the prospect of hearing from their leader felt like a lifeline. "He's coming home," Desiree continued, "in a week." A ripple of excitement and relief spread through the group. They had been without their leader for too long, and Gunnar's return meant more than just strategy. It meant hope. Karina, Alex, and Ashley exchanged murmurs of "finally" and "about time," their faces reflecting the weight of waiting. Ashley stepped forward, her eyes locked on Desiree. "That's great news. We could use his leadership right now. Did he say anything else?" Desiree's expression darkened slightly, bringing the weight of her next words into focus. "Yeah, there's more. I managed to locate a group of Black Dawn operatives. They've returned to the fortress where we lost so much." Her voice faltered briefly, the memory of losing her leg at that same fortress flashing through her mind. "They're digging through the rubble searching for something. We don't know what, but whatever it is, it can't be good." At the mention of the fortress, a heavy silence fell over the group. The fortress was a symbol of their darkest moments, a place of loss, sacrifice, and unfinished business. For Desiree, it had been the site of one of her greatest personal battles, both physically and mentally. Desiree walked over to the large table at the center of the room, setting down her 50-cal sniper rifle with a resonant thud. The weapon gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, a testament to her readiness. She looked at each of her teammates with fire in her eyes, her voice firm and filled with resolve. "I'm tired of playing defense. It's time for payback. Who's with me?" A chorus of agreement rose around her. Each member of the team had their own reasons for seeking retribution against Black Dawn, and the idea of striking back resonated deeply with all of them. The room crackled with shared resolve. Ashley stepped forward, her eyes blazing with the same intensity as Desiree's. "Count me in. They've taken too much from us already. It's time we showed them what happens when they mess with our family." Karina and Alex nodded in agreement, their postures rigid with readiness. They understood what was at stake. This mission was more than just tactical. It was personal. DeSera reached into a nearby bag, pulling out a collection of cloaks and a pair of gleaming silver daggers. She laid them out on the table with a sense of reverence, each item shimmering under the lights. She picked up a cloak, turning toward Ashley with a knowing smile. "Ashley, this was yours when you were part of the pack. It's time you wore it again." Ashley's hand brushed against the familiar fabric, memories flooding back. She draped the cloak over her shoulders, the weight of it comforting, yet full of history. "Thank you, Des. I won't let you down." DeSera then turned to Karina and Alex, holding out 2 more cloaks, her expression serious. "Gunnar gave me permission to pass these on to you two. These are pack cloaks. They signify your membership in our family. When Gunnar gets back, he'll make it official. But for now, consider yourselves part of something bigger." Karina accepted her cloak with a solemn nod. "Thank you. I won't take this lightly." Alex followed suit, her eyes filled with pride as she wrapped the cloak around herself. "We'll wear these with honor." DeSera then handed them the silver daggers, each blade gleaming with a magical aura. "These aren't just any daggers. They're enchanted to send demons back to hell. Use them wisely and remember, these aren't just for us. We're fighting for everyone who's counting on us." With the cloaks on their shoulders and the daggers in their hands, the team felt a renewed sense of unity and purpose. They weren't just a group of individuals, they were a family, bound by shared loss and an unwavering commitment to protect the world from the darkness that sought to consume it. DeSera picked up her sniper rifle, slinging it over her shoulder with a fierce look in her eyes. "Gear up, we've got a fortress to reclaim, and some payback to deliver." Ashley, Karina, Alex, and the rest of the team followed her lead, gathering their weapons and preparing for the mission. Their movements were precise, efficient, and filled with the quiet determination of those who had already faced death and survived. Jewel stood by, watching as her teammates prepared to leave. Her heart swelled with pride, but the familiar ache of worry settled in as well. She stepped forward, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Be careful out there, all of you, and come back safe." Ashley turned to Jewel, her eyes softening as she gave a nod. "We will. I promise." As the team filed out of the training facility and into the fading light, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grounds. They knew the mission ahead would be fraught with danger, but they were ready. Together they would face whatever darkness lay ahead, driven by a shared mission and the strength of the bonds they had forged. The pack was on the move, and nothing could stand in their way. The early morning sun bathed the training facility in a golden light as the team gathered outside, their pack cloaks draped over their shoulders. Each of them wore their silver daggers, the magical aura around the blades, a quiet reminder of the battle they were preparing for. DeSera stood at the front, her prosthetic leg gleaming in the sunlight, her sniper rifle slung across her back. She radiated confidence and determination as she looked over her team. Desira's blue eyes, sharp with resolve, scanned the group. "All right, everyone, we're heading to Traverse City Airport. I've got a surprise waiting for us there. Courtesy of Elon Musk." Ashley raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "A surprise? This isn't just another set of gadgets, is it?" DeSera smirked, a rare glint of excitement flashing in her eyes. "You'll see. Let's move out." Without hesitation, the team loaded into their vehicles. The drive to the airport was filled with anticipation, each member mentally preparing for what lay ahead. The mission was personal, and they were ready to face Black Dawn head-on. As they pulled into the private section of Traverse City Airport, the team's jaws dropped at the sight awaiting them. Sitting on the tarmac was a sleek, futuristic jet, its glossy black finish gleaming under the sunlight. There were no traditional markings on it, save for the unmistakable SpaceX logo emblazoned on its side. DeSera led them toward the jet, pride evident in her smile. Meet our new ride. The leg isn't the only thing Elon's given us. Karina let out a low whistle, her eyes roaming over the jet's smooth lines. Now that's what I call an upgrade. This thing looks like it could fly straight into space. Alex grinned, her gaze filled with awe. I've read about these. Top-tier stealth capabilities, state-of-the-art tech. This is more than just a jet. Ashley's eyes lit up with excitement. Looks like we're flying in style today. Let's check it out. Inside, the jet's interior resembled a high-tech command center more than an aircraft. A digital display table dominated the center, surrounded by plush tactical seats equipped with integrated controls. Monitors lined the walls, showing live satellite feeds and tactical maps, while a small command suite in the corner buzzed with advanced communication systems and data analysis tools. Desera led them toward the back where weapon lockers stood against the walls. She opened one of the lockers, revealing an array of cutting-edge weapons and gadgets. This jet's fully outfitted. Weapons, surveillance gear, the latest tech. It's all here. We're ready for whatever comes next. Ashley pulled out a sleek black assault rifle, clearly impressed. We've got enough firepower here to take on an entire Black Dawn battalion. Karina examined a set of grappling hooks and night vision goggles, her tactical mind already mapping out how they'd use the equipment. We're definitely ready for anything now. Alex's eyes lit up when she reached the back of the jet, spotting 4 electric dirt bikes secured in the cargo hold. And we've even got new rides. These bikes will get us through rough terrain fast and silently. Desera nodded, her smirk widening. Elon made sure we had everything we could need. These bikes are top of the line, silent and fast. Perfect for sneaking up on Black Dawn without them ever hearing us. As the jet took off, the team gathered around the digital display table. The screens on the walls flickered to life, showing live satellite images of their destination. The fortress where Black Dawn operatives were digging through the ruins. The terrain captured in real time from SpaceX satellites showed the mountainous regions surrounding the fortress, with thick forests offering potential cover for their approach. Ashley stood at the head of the table analyzing the map. Here's the layout. The fortress is in the middle of this mountainous region, surrounded by dense forest. There are only a few narrow paths leading in and out. We'll need to use the cover of the forest to get close. Desera zoomed in on the satellite feed, revealing figures moving through the rubble. There they are. They're looking for something, but we don't know what yet. We need to stop them before they find it. Alex studied the surrounding terrain, her tactical instincts kicking in. If we come in from the north, we can use the forest to stay hidden. The electric bikes will get us close without making any noise. Once we're in position, we'll go in on foot. Karina nodded, her tone steady and confident. I'll take point with Alex. We can provide cover while Desera takes out the guards with her sniper rifle. Once they're down, we move in fast. Ashley looked around at her team, her voice firm but filled with the quiet confidence of a seasoned leader. It's a solid plan. We get in, neutralize any threats, and find out what they're after. Remember, we move as a team. No one gets left behind. Desera checked her sniper rifle, the sound of her preparing it sharp and reassuring. This is personal for all of us. Let's show Black Dawn what happens when they mess with the pack. As the jet raced through the sky, the team spent the rest of the flight preparing. They double-checked their weapons, reviewed the plan, and steeled themselves for the battle ahead. There was a shared tension in the air, but it was underlined by a sense of purpose. They had been waiting for this moment, this chance to take the fight to Black Dawn, and they were ready. Ashley adjusted her cloak, feeling the weight of the history it carried. She thought of the battles they'd fought, the losses they'd endured, and the people counting on them. Failure wasn't an option. Desera loaded her rifle with practiced precision, the thought of reclaiming the fortress driving her forward. The memory of losing her leg there had haunted her for too long. This was her chance for payback. Karina and Alex prepared their gear, their faces set with grim determination. They had faced darkness before, and they would face it again. But this time, they were better prepared. and they had a purpose that fueled their every move. As the jet began its descent, the team moved to the cargo hold. They strapped on their helmets and secured their weapons, the electric hum of the jet's engines surrounding them. The time for planning was over. Now it was time for action. DeSera glanced at her teammates, her voice strong and unwavering. We're here to take back what's ours. Stay focused, watch each other's backs, and let's show them what the pack is made of. With one final nod of agreement, the team mounted their electric dirt bikes. The engines hummed silently as they readied themselves for the approach. The fortress loomed in the distance, hidden among the thick trees and mountainous terrain. But it wouldn't be hidden for long. Ashley led the way, her voice calm but filled with resolve. Let's move. Time to show Black Dawn exactly who they're dealing with. The bikes surged forward, gliding silently through the forest as the team made their way toward the fortress. And the battle that awaited them. The dense forest surrounding the ruins of the fortress was heavy with silence as the team approached on their electric dirt bikes. The hum of the engines was barely audible, and Beta ran beside them, her powerful form moving effortlessly over the uneven terrain. The fortress loomed ahead, a decaying relic of past battles, shrouded in the haunting glow of the setting sun. For DeSera, it was a painful reminder of the losses they had endured. As they neared the fortress, Ashley raised her hand, signaling the team to slow down. They came to a stop near a cliff overlooking the ruins and dismounted, moving cautiously to the edge to get a better view. DeSera, sniper rifle already in hand, dropped to one knee, scanning the area through her scope. Her blue eyes narrowed as the past came flooding back in vivid, painful flashes. She could see the fortress as it once was, not a ruin but a battlefield. In the flashback, DeSera was pinned behind a crumbling wall, her leg torn open, blood staining the dirt around her. The sounds of gunfire and explosions filled the air as Black Dawn forces pressed their attack. She could still hear the shouts of her comrades as they fought desperately to hold the line. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over her. She looked up just in time to see a clawed hand raise above her. She fired her rifle, but the force of the creature's blow knocked her to the ground, pain exploding through her body. The world went dark. The memory hit her like a punch to the gut. DeSera blinked, shaking her head to dispel the image, her hand instinctively brushing over her prosthetic leg. The phantom pain was still there, a ghost of the past. But she had survived. And now she was back for revenge. Ashley crouched beside her, her voice low and calm. "You all right, Des? You seemed lost for a second." DeSera took a steadying breath, her expression hardening. "I'm fine. Just old ghosts. Let's focus on the mission." Ashley nodded, casting a glance toward the fortress below. "All right. Beta and I will take the west side, clear out the guards. Alex, Karina, you two handle the east. Des, you're on overwatch. Make sure no one on the roof lives long enough to sound the alarm." Karina and Alex exchanged a glance, both nodding in silent agreement. Weapons in hand, they moved to the edge of the cliff, ready to descend. Alex gripped her silver dagger tightly, her eyes sharp and focused. "We're ready. Let's move." Ashley led the way, with Beta close by her side. They moved silently down the rocky slope, using the shadows for cover as they approached the fortress's western wall. Beta's sharp senses were on high alert, her nose twitching as she caught the scent of nearby guards. On the eastern side, Karina and Alex slipped down the slope. Karina's katana was in hand, its blade gleaming in the fading light. She moved with grace, her every step precise and deliberate. Alex followed her lead, her dagger ready for the first sign of trouble. DeSera stayed on the cliff, her sniper rifle trained on the roof. Through the scope, she spotted the first guard, a lone sentry pacing along the edge, unaware of the team's approach. DeSera's finger tightened on the trigger. Not this time, she thought as she exhaled and squeezed. The shot was silent, the guard dropping without a sound. Desera quickly moved to her next target, her aim steady, her breathing calm. Each shot was clean, precise, and deadly, clearing the roof of any potential threats. On the ground, Ashley and Beta reached the western wall, crouching behind a pile of rubble. Two guards patrolled nearby, their backs turned. Ashley signaled Beta with a quick nod, and the wolf sprang into action. In a blur of motion, Beta pounced on the first guard, her powerful jaws clamping down on his leg before he could react. His muffled cry was cut short as Ashley dispatched the second guard with a swift, silent strike to the throat. On the eastern side, Karina and Alex moved just as efficiently. Karina's katana sliced through the air with deadly precision, taking out the guards in her path. Alex followed closely, her dagger flashing as she eliminated the remaining threat with a quick, practiced movement. With the perimeter clear, the team regrouped at the fortress's entrance, keeping to the shadows as they slipped inside. The interior was dark and foreboding, the walls scorched from the previous battle. Rubble littered the floor, and the air was thick with dust and tension. Alex crouched behind a collapsed wall, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a group of Black Dawn operatives digging through a large pile of debris in the center of the room. "They're looking for something," she whispered to the team. "But what?" Karina peered around the corner, her grip tightening on her katana. "Whatever it is, it can't be good." Desera's voice crackled through their earpieces. "I've got eyes on them. Whatever they're after, we can't let them find it. Be ready to move." Ashley scanned the operatives, her mind racing. "They're distracted. This is our chance to strike, but we need to figure out what they're digging for first." The team stayed low, watching as the operatives continued their search. Their movements were frantic, almost desperate, as they tore through the rubble with shovels and crowbars. Whatever they were looking for, it was important. Beta stayed close to Ashley, her ears twitching as she listened to the operatives' muttered conversations. She could sense the tension in the air, her instincts warning her that something dangerous was just beneath the surface. The seconds dragged on, each one heavy with anticipation. The team was poised to strike, their nerves taut as they prepared for the signal. But before they could move, one of the Black Dawn operatives let out a triumphant shout. "I found it!" he cried, holding up a small, gleaming object. Ashley's heart skipped a beat. They found something. The team's cover was blown. "Go!" Ashley commanded, her voice low but urgent. Beta leapt forward, Ashley close behind, as the team surged into action. The element of surprise was gone, but they were ready. They would not let Black Dawn walk away with whatever they had unearthed. Inside the crumbling fortress, the air was thick with tension. Ashley, Alex, Karina, and Beta crouched behind a collapsed wall, their eyes locked on the Black Dawn operatives, frantically digging through the rubble in the center of the room. The muted sounds of their shovels and urgent whispers carried through the dark space, filling the team with anticipation. Ashley gave a final glance at her team, signaling it was time to strike. Alex and Karina were ready, their bodies tense with focus while Beta stayed crouched, her ears perked and eyes fixed on the enemy. Desera, stationed above them on the cliff, had her sniper rifle at the ready, prepared to cover them from above. Into her comms, Ashley whispered, "We move on my mark. Take them out quickly and quietly. No one leaves this room alive." Alex gave a curt nod, her fingers tightening around her dagger. "I'm ready." Karina's grip on her katana was firm, her expression resolute. "Let's finish this." Ashley steadied her breath and counted down. 3, 2, 1, now. The team moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, slipping from their hiding spot and advancing on the unsuspecting operatives. Ashley and Beta took the left flank, while Alex and Karina darted to the right, their movements as silent as the shadows they used for cover. The first operative never saw Ashley coming. In one swift motion, her dagger found its mark and he collapsed without a sound. Beta pounced on the next, her powerful jaws clamping down on his arm before he could react, dragging him down. On the right, Karina's katana sliced through the air with deadly precision, dropping 2 operatives before they could draw their weapons. Alex was close behind, her dagger flashing as she dispatched the last one with a quick, clean strike. Desera watched from her perch above, her scope trained on the surrounding area, ensuring no reinforcements were on their way. Her breath remained steady, eyes sharp for any threats. The room fell silent. The only sound was the team's steady breathing, adrenaline still coursing through their veins as they surveyed the aftermath. Ashley motioned for them to regroup at the pile of rubble, their target now in sight. "Good work, everyone," she said, her voice low but filled with resolve. "Let's see what they were after." The team gathered around the debris. Alex knelt, brushing aside stones and dirt to reveal a hidden metal hatch embedded in the floor. She frowned as her fingers traced its outline. Looks like they were trying to open this. Whatever's down there, they didn't want anyone to find it. Karina stepped closer, her eyes scanning the hatch for traps. "Could be dangerous, stay sharp." Ashley crouched down, inspecting the hatch. "It's locked, but it doesn't look booby-trapped. We need to see what's inside." Desira's voice came through the comms. "I'll keep overwatch. If anyone else shows up, I'll handle it." With a nod of acknowledgement, Ashley gripped the handle of the hatch. Beta sniffed the air around them, letting out a low growl. Something about the scent from below made her uneasy. Ashley glanced at her, then back at the team. "Be ready for anything. On 3. 1, 2, 3. With a powerful yank, Ashley wrenched the hatch open. A gust of cold, musty air rushed up from the dark tunnel below, carrying with it the stench of decay and something darker, something unnatural. Karina shone her flashlight down the hole, revealing a steep set of stone stairs leading deep into the earth. "Looks like it goes a long way down." Alex pulled out her sidearm, her face set in determination. "Whatever it is, we can't leave it down there for Black Dawn. We need to secure it." Ashley nodded, turning to Desira. "We're going down. Keep us covered from up here." "Copy that," Desira replied, her voice steady. "Stay safe." The team began their descent into the tunnel, their flashlights casting eerie beams of light across the stone walls. The air grew colder and heavier as they descended, the stench of rot growing more intense with each step. Beta moved ahead of them, her hackles raised as she sniffed the air, ever vigilant. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a large wooden door covered in glowing symbols, demonic runes etched into the wood, pulsing faintly in the dark. Alex's hand hovered over her weapon, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't good. These runes, they're ancient. This is serious dark magic." Karina held her katana at the ready. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." Ashley gave a nod, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Let's see what's inside. Stay sharp." With a deep breath, Alex pushed open the door, its creaking echoing ominously in the chamber beyond. The room they stepped into was vast and circular, its walls covered in more glowing runes. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, and resting atop it was a twisted black orb that radiated an ominous, pulsating energy. Ashley approached cautiously, the hair on the back of her neck standing on end. This is it. This is what they were looking for. The malevolent energy emanating from the orb filled the room, sending chills down their spines. Karina studied it warily. "That thing's dangerous. It's filled with dark magic." Alex took a step closer, drawn to the object despite herself. "We need to contain it. If Black Dawn gets their hands on this—" "Don't touch it," Ashley warned, pulling Alex back just as her fingers hovered over the orb. "We don't know what kind of power it holds." Beta let out a low growl, her body tense, sensing the orb's malevolent force. The dark energy swirled ominously, as if the artifact itself was alive, aware of their presence. Carefully, Alex retrieved a containment bag from her pack. "I've got it. We'll seal it in here." She placed the orb inside the bag, which hissed softly as it sealed itself, the dark energy contained but still faintly pulsing. Ashley let out a breath, her voice taut with urgency. Good. Now, let's get out of here. Desira's voice crackled through the comms. Heads up, team! I've got movement topside. More Black Dawn operatives are closing in fast. Ashley's heart raced. We're coming up! Be ready! The team turned and bolted back up the stairs, their footfalls echoing through the narrow tunnel. Beta led the way, her senses on high alert, guiding them through the darkness. The faint sounds of Black Dawn operatives shouting orders reached their ears as they neared the surface. Desira's sniper rifle rang out as they burst through the hatch, her shots picking off Black Dawn soldiers as they poured into the fortress. Move! We've got to go. Ashley, Karina, and Alex sprinted toward their electric dirt bikes, the sound of enemy fire growing louder behind them. Beta stayed close to Ashley, growling at the operatives pursuing them. Desira fired another shot, taking down a soldier before leaping onto her own bike. Let's get out of here before we're overrun! The team gunned their bikes and sped off into the forest, the trees blurring past them as they raced away from the fortress. The orb was secure, but they all knew the real danger was just beginning. As they rode, Desira glanced over her shoulder at the fading silhouette of the fortress. We've got the artifact. Now, let's figure out what the hell it is, and how to destroy it. The jet hummed softly as it soared through the night sky, its interior lights dimmed to a low glow. The atmosphere inside was tense, yet focused, as the team gathered around the digital display table. Resting at the center of the table, sealed in a special containment bag, was the dark orb they had retrieved from the fortress. Its ominous energy seemed to fill the room, casting an uneasy aura over everyone. Ashley stood at the head of the table, her eyes fixed on the orb. We need to figure out what this thing is, and fast. Black Dawn was desperate to get their hands on it, which means it's not good news for us. Alex stepped forward, setting up a set of high-tech scanning tools. I'll run a full analysis. With the equipment we've got here, we should be able to get some answers. Karina leaned against the wall, her katana resting nearby. Her gaze never wavered from the orb as she spoke. Whatever this thing is, it's giving off serious dark vibes. Be careful, Alex. We don't know what it's capable of. From her post at the front of the jet, Desira kept her sniper rifle within reach, scanning the skies for any sign they were being followed. I'll make sure the skies stay clear. Just say the word if you need backup. Alex nodded, beginning her work as she carefully placed the containment bag on the table. Inside, the orb pulsed faintly with dark energy, as if it were alive, struggling to break free. Ashley's jaw tightened as she watched the scanning process begin. What are we looking at, Alex? Could this be some kind of weapon? Alex typed commands into the scanner, her fingers moving swiftly across the controls. Maybe, but I think it's worse. This thing is giving off a unique energy signature, both electromagnetic and something else. Something darker. The holographic display above the table flickered to life, showing a series of complex readouts and data streams. The team stared at the projections in silence, waiting for answers. Beta, sitting beside Ashley, sensed the rising tension in the room. She growled softly, her amber eyes fixed on the orb, instinctively wary of its dangerous presence. A soft beep from the scanner cut through the silence, and Alex's brow furrowed as she examined the data. There it is. This thing is emitting dark energy. And there's something else. I'm picking up traces of demonic magic. Karina's expression hardened. Demonic magic, that's a bad sign. Ashley crossed her arms, her voice steady but grim. We've seen Black Dawn dabbling in dark forces before, but if they're messing with demonic magic, it means they're taking things to a new level. Alex leaned in closer to the display, her mind racing as she processed the data. There's more. These readings. This orb isn't just a source of dark energy. It's an artifact, and it's ancient. It's been infused with dark magic. Strong magic. The weight of Alex's words settled over the group, each of them understanding the dangerous potential of the object they had brought aboard the jet. Ashley's gaze remained locked on the orb, her voice low. If this thing is linked to demonic magic, then Black Dawn might be planning to use it to summon something. Maybe even someone. Karina gripped the hilt of her katana. We can't let that happen. If they succeed, it could unleash something we can't stop. Alex adjusted the scanner's settings, initiating a deeper analysis. I'm going to dig deeper, see if we can figure out its origin or its intended use. The holographic display shifted, revealing a more detailed look inside the orb. The complex magical structure became visible, a tangled web of dark symbols and glowing runes. The energy in the rooms seemed to grow heavier, the air thickening with a palpable sense of foreboding. Beta's growl grew louder, her fur standing on end as the orb's dark energy pulsed stronger. Ashley placed a hand on Beta's back, trying to calm her. Easy, Beta. We're going to figure this out. Suddenly the scanner beeped rapidly, and Alex's eyes widened as new information appeared on the screen. This isn't just an artifact. It's a key. Ashley frowned, her confusion mirrored in the eyes of her teammates. A key? A key to what? Alex's fingers moved quickly across the controls as she studied the data. These runes, they're ancient. Older than anything I've seen before. They're connected to some kind of portal magic. This artifact, it's a key to another realm. The realization hit them like a wave. Karina's voice was tense. Another realm? You mean the demonic realm? Alex nodded, her face pale but focused. Yeah, this artifact could be used to open a portal to the demonic realm. If Black Dawn gets hold of it, they could use it to bring demons into our world. The gravity of the situation settled over the team. Ashley's hands clenched into fists. We can't let that happen. We need to get this to Eliana Vale. She'll know how to deal with it. Desera's voice crackled through the comms. Copy that. We're approaching the training facility. Let's get this thing secured, then figure out how to get it to Eliana. Alex carefully sealed the orb in its containment bag once more, ensuring it was tightly secured. We can't let our guard down. If Black Dawn was this desperate to get it, they'll come after us. Ashley's expression hardened with resolve. Then we'll be ready. We're not letting this fall back into their hands. The jet descended toward the training facility, its sleek black form gliding silently through the night. Inside, the team remained vigilant, knowing that the stakes had just risen dramatically. They had the artifact, but now came the even more difficult task of protecting it and figuring out how to stop Black Dawn's plan. As the jet touched down, the team prepared for what lay ahead. They knew that this battle was far from over and that the artifact in their possession could be the key to either saving or dooming their world. The air inside the training facility was thick with tension. The team gathered around the digital display table where the dark orb sat securely contained. After their discovery that the artifact could open a portal to the realm of the Demon King, Ultranacious Eternus, they knew they had no time to waste. Ashley clutched the talisman Eliana Vale had given her, an intricately carved stone that faintly glowed with soft blue light, preparing to summon the elf mage. Ashley looked around at her teammates, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We need Eliana's help with this. She's the only one who can keep this thing out of Black Dawn's hands. Everyone be ready. She might arrive quickly. Alex secured the containment bag around the orb, casting a wary glance at the dark object. It's ready. Let's just hope Eliana can do something about it. Desera stood near the window, her sniper rifle slung across her back, her eyes scanning the perimeter. I'll keep an eye out for any trouble just in case. Karina and Beta stayed close, both tense and alert. Beta's sharp instincts told her that something dangerous was near, and she kept a vigilant eye on the orb. Ashley closed her eyes and whispered the words in Elvish that Eliana had taught her. The talisman in her hand began to glow brighter, filling the room with a soft hum. The energy in the air shifted, growing stronger with each passing second. A moment later, a swirling portal of blue and silver light appeared in the center of the room. Wind gusted through the facility, and the team shielded their eyes as a tall, graceful figure stepped through the shimmering light. Aliana Vale emerged from the portal, her silver hair flowing like a waterfall behind her, her deep blue eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Her elegant robes rippled as she carried her wooden staff, which was topped with a radiant crystal. Her very presence calmed the room, infusing the air with magic and serenity. Ashley lowered her hand, the talisman dimming as Aliana approached. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Aliana." Aliana inclined her head, her voice soft but serious. "Of course, Ashley. When I felt your call, I knew it was urgent. What have you discovered?" Ashley gestured toward the table, where the containment bag held the orb. "We found this at the fortress. We think Black Dawn was after it, but we don't know exactly what it is. Can you help?" Aliana stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she examined the orb through the bag. She extended her hand, hovering it above the orb, and closed her eyes. Magic flowed from her fingertips, shimmering softly in the air. She muttered words in a language unknown to the team, her expression growing more serious with each second. After a tense few minutes, Aliana opened her eyes, her face grim. "This artifact is no mere object. It is a key, specifically, a key to Ultranacious Eternus, the Demon King's realm." Alex's eyes widened. The Demon King? The one who led Black Dawn? So this thing could open a portal to his realm? Aliana nodded, her tone heavy. "Yes. The dark magic infused within this orb is tied to his essence. It was created to open a gateway to his domain, allowing him and his followers to enter your world." Desira's fists clenched. So that's what they were after. They wanted to bring the Demon King back. Ashley's voice was urgent. "Can we destroy it? If we destroy the key, can we stop them from ever opening that portal?" Aliana sighed, shaking her head slowly. "It is not that simple. The magic binding this artifact is ancient and formidable. To destroy it would require severing its connection to the Demon King himself, a task that demands great power and knowledge, which I do not possess alone." Karina frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. "So what do we do? How do we stop Black Dawn from getting their hands on this thing?" Aliana stood taller, her expression resolute. "The orb must be taken to a place of safety, somewhere it cannot be reached by Black Dawn or any dark forces. I can create a portal to Alfheim, where my people will guard it and ensure it is never used for evil." Alex looked at the orb with concern. "Can we really trust it to stay safe there? I mean, if it's this dangerous, is there any chance it could still be used, even in Alfheim?" Aliana smiled softly, her confidence unwavering. "Alfheim is a realm of light, protected by ancient magic and powerful guardians. The orb's dark energy will be contained, and we will ensure that no one can ever use it to open the portal." Desira tightened the strap on her sniper rifle. "All right, let's get this thing to Alfheim then." But before they could prepare for the journey, Ashley raised her hand. "Wait, no. Aliana, we need to strengthen our defenses here and wait for Gunnar to return. We can't leave the training facility vulnerable with Black Dawn still out there." Aliana nodded in understanding. "Very well. I will take the artifact to Alfheim alone, and you can remain here to fortify your defenses. You are wise to protect your stronghold." Ashley handed the containment bag with the orb to Aliana, her expression serious. "We're trusting you to keep it safe. We'll hold down the fort until Gunnar gets back." Aliana smiled, accepting the artifact. "Rest assured, it will be safe in Alfheim. My people will guard it well." As Aliana raised her staff, the crystal at its tip glowed brightly, and another portal began to form, a gateway to the elven realm of Alfheim. The team watched as the lush green forest beyond the portal shimmered into view, filled with towering trees and glowing flowers. Eliana stepped toward the portal, her voice calm and reassuring. Focus on your defenses and trust in the strength of your team. I will return when the time is right. With that, Eliana stepped through the portal, taking the dark orb with her. The portal shimmered for a moment before closing, leaving the room in silence. Ashley exhaled slowly, turning to the team. All right, everyone. We need to focus on strengthening the facility. Desiree, coordinate with the recruits and set up a perimeter. Alex, work on improving our tech defenses. Karina, you and Beta will lead the training for combat readiness. The team nodded in agreement, each member moving to carry out their tasks. As they began their preparations, a message came through their secure comms. DeSera's eyes widened as she listened to the incoming transmission. It's Gunnar. He's on his way back. Ashley's face lit up with relief. Finally. The team exchanged glances, knowing that Gunnar's return meant they would soon have the leadership and strength they needed to face Black Dawn head-on. With Eliana safely securing the artifact in Alfheim and Gunnar's return imminent, the team prepared for the next phase of their fight. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way, together. Chapter 1. The Return of Gunnar and Eli. The air was thick with tension. The ruins of the old agency outpost stood silent around the two teams, a haunting reminder of all they had lost. Sophia leaned against a crumbling wall, her eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, Gunnar was returning, or so they had been told. Alex paced nearby, her fingers absent-mindedly grazing the hilt of her blade. He'll come, she muttered to no one in particular, though her words carried the weight of both hope and doubt. Karina, always the quiet one, stood ready, her katana balanced across her back, her gaze fixed on the sky. Suddenly, a crackle of energy rippled through the air. The sky above shimmered, bending as though reality itself was tearing apart. A brilliant light exploded in the center of the field, and from its core, two figures stepped forward. Gunnar stood tall, battle-worn but alive, the faint glow of the starlight gem pulsing in his hand. Beside him was Eli, draped in shadows, her presence both mysterious and commanding. Ashley was the first to speak, her voice shaky but filled with relief. Gunnar, you made it. Gunnar's gaze swept across his old comrades, each face etched with disbelief, relief, and curiosity. I told you I'd come back, he said, his voice carrying a weariness that only those who've seen too much can bear. Sophia stepped forward, her eyes locking onto the stranger beside him. Who is she? This is Eli, Gunnar said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Without her, I wouldn't be here. She helped me retrieve the starlight gem. She's one of us now. Karina's hand hovered near her sword, her eyes narrowing. One of us! Just like that? Eli stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. I understand your hesitation, but I am bound to this gem, your world. It needs this power to survive what's coming, and I will help, as long as you let me. There was a beat of silence as the teams exchanged glances, the tension hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Finally, Ashley stepped forward, breaking the silence. If Gunnar trusts you, that's good enough for me. Sophia nodded. We've been through enough to know when help is genuine, but if you betray us... I won't, Eli said softly, her gaze steady. We're all in this together now. Chapter 2. Sophia's Briefing. The Phantom's Revelation. The tension in the air was palpable. Gunnar stood in the center of the room, his arms crossed, eyes hard as he waited for Sophia and Alex to explain the details. But something in their demeanor, something in the way they looked at each other, set Gunnar's nerves on edge. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice heavy with the weight of what she was about to reveal. Gunnar, this is bigger than we thought. The mole inside our ranks. It wasn't just about leaking information. The leader of Black Dawn, the one behind everything, it's not who we thought. Gunnar's brow furrowed, but before he could speak, Alex cut in, her voice strained. It was Trinity Gunnar, The words hit him like a freight train. Trinity? No, it couldn't be. His mind rebelled against the very notion. Trinity had been his right hand, his most trusted confidant. They had fought side by side. How could she be the one behind it all? No. His voice was hard, like a fist pounding against steel. That's impossible. Sophia shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. It's the truth. Trinity has been playing us all along. She's not just a mole. She's the Phantom, the leader of Black Dawn. She's been orchestrating everything, feeding us false information, manipulating every move we've made. She's been working with Ultranacious from the start. Gunnar took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. The Phantom. The leader of Black Dawn had always been a shadowy figure, the one enemy they could never quite get their hands on. And all this time, it had been Trinity, the person he trusted most. Trinity? He spat the name, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. The Phantom? No. There has to be a mistake. She wouldn't. She would, and she did, Alex said, her voice bitter. We have proof. We found communications, direct links between her and Ultranacious. She's been planning this for years, manipulating you, all of us, to further her agenda. Gunnar's fists clenched at his sides, rage bubbling beneath the surface. His mind raced back to every mission, every conversation, every moment of trust he had placed in her. How long had she been lying? How many times had she betrayed them without him even knowing? Sophia stepped forward, her voice quiet but resolute. Gunnar, she's in custody now, locked up in Guantanamo Bay, but she hasn't said a word. She's waiting, buying her time. We believe she's still in contact with Ultranacious, even from inside the prison. Whatever they're planning, it's not over. Gunnar's heart pounded in his ears. Trinity, the Phantom, was alive, waiting. In Guantanamo Bay, the betrayal was like a knife twisting in his gut, but there was no time to dwell on the pain. There was only one thought in his mind now: Ultranacious. She's not just a traitor, Gunnar growled. She's been controlling everything, all this time, and I didn't see it. Chapter 3. Karina's briefing, DeSera's injury and the return mission to find the orb. Karina's gaze met Gunnar's, and she hesitated for a moment, knowing the weight of what she was about to revisit. You remember the mission at the Eastern European fortress? That's where we lost DeSera's leg. We fought hard to save her that day, but it nearly broke us. Gunnar's fists clenched at his sides, the memories of that mission still raw in his mind. He had been there, watching helplessly as the demon had torn into DeSera's leg. The pain, the blood, and the panic of that moment had stayed with him ever since. We were fighting our way to Alexandra, Karina continued, her voice tense. We thought it was just another Black Dawn stronghold, but then the demons showed up. DeSera was covering us, but one of them got through. You saw it. It tore through her leg like it was nothing. Ashley stepped in, her voice full of grim resolve. Jewel had to amputate right there on the floor. We were under attack and there was no time to get her out. If it wasn't for Aliana Vale, we wouldn't have made it. She saved all of us that day. Gunnar's jaw tightened as he remembered how close they had come to losing DeSera. He had been powerless to stop the demon's attack, and the memory of DeSera's scream still echoed in his mind. But that's not where the story ends, Karina said, her voice hardening. After we got DeSera out, we had to go back. You were off on your own quest for the Starlight Gem, but we couldn't let Black Dawn hold that place. We returned to the fortress, and that's when we found the orb. Sophia stepped forward, picking up the story. The fortress had been quiet since our first mission. We didn't expect to find much, but when we got inside, we realized Black Dawn had been hiding something deeper, something they hadn't even used the first time around. Karina nodded, her voice grave. That's when we found it, the orb. It was hidden deep in the fortress, buried behind layers of wards and traps. At first, we didn't know what it was, but when we brought it back, we realized the truth. Gunnar's eyes narrowed. The orb? You're saying it was there all along, even when DeSera was injured? Sophia shook her head. No, it wasn't active back then. Black Dawn hadn't tapped into its full power yet. But by the time we returned, something had changed. The orb is tied directly to Ultranacious's realm. It's the key to bringing him back. Karina added, "We had to recover it, but destroying it wasn't an option. If we had broken it, it might have opened the portal. That's why we gave it to Ileana Vale. She's safeguarding it in her world." The weight of it all settled on Gunner's shoulders. He had been there when Desera had lost her leg, fighting alongside her. Then, while he was off chasing the Starlight Gem, the team had gone back, facing those demons again and discovering the orb, the very thing that could bring Ultranacious into their world. His voice was tight with frustration and guilt. "I should have been there for that. We nearly lost Desera, and then you went back without me. I should have been with you." Sophia placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice calm but resolute. "You were doing what needed to be done. Without the Starlight Gem, we wouldn't stand a chance against Ultranacious. But now we need to act quickly. The more rituals Black Dawn performs, the closer they get to using the orb to bring him back." Ashley nodded. "And if they succeed, not even Ileana can keep them from getting their hands on the orb." Chapter 4. Rest and Reflection Before Building the Workshop. The air was still as the portal closed behind them, the last echoes of battle fading into silence. Gunner stood in the clearing, his shoulders tense, his mind racing through the events that had led them here. The battle with Black Dawn, the discovery of the orb, and the relentless fight to stay ahead of Ultranacious's forces, it all weighed heavily on him. But for now, they were safe. Beside him, Eli exhaled, her body visibly relaxing as the tension of the past few days began to lift. The Starlight Gem still hummed faintly at her side, its energy a constant reminder of the power they now possessed, but even that didn't erase the exhaustion in her eyes. "We made it," Eli said softly, her voice a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Gunner nodded, though his mind was still focused on everything that lay ahead. The battles were far from over, but for the first time in days, they had a moment to breathe. "We should get some rest," Gunner said, his voice quieter than usual. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we won't get far if we don't recharge." Eli gave him a tired smile. "Agreed. It's been a long few days." As they made their way to the nearby safe house, Gunner felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. The team had been through so much, and there was still more to come, but for now, they had to rest. They needed to be ready for whatever came next. The safe house was modest, tucked away in the forest, far from prying eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough, a place to gather their strength and regroup before diving headlong into the construction of the new workshop. Once inside, Eli moved to a chair by the window, letting the faint moonlight cast a soft glow across her face. She sat silently for a moment, watching the stars, her mind likely racing as fast as Gunner's. He too felt the pull of exhaustion, but sleep wasn't easy for someone like him. Not with so much at stake. "You should sleep," Eli said gently, as if reading his thoughts. "We're no good to anyone if we run ourselves into the ground." Gunner sighed and nodded. He sat down across from her, the quiet of the room pressing in on him. The past few days had been brutal, and his body screamed for rest, but as soon as he closed his eyes, the memories of the battles, the demons, and Desera's screams echoed in his mind. "It's hard to let go," Gunner admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Eli leaned back in her chair, understanding flickering in her eyes. "I know, but we have to, even if it's just for a few hours. There's no winning this if we're not at full strength." Gunner knew she was right. The fight wasn't over, but that didn't mean they couldn't take a moment to breathe. He nodded again, letting the tension slowly seep out of his body as he leaned back in his chair. For a moment, silence filled the room. A silence that was both comforting and unnerving. The dawn light filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the safe house. Gunner stretched, feeling the tightness in his muscles from days of non-stop action. He glanced across the room to see Eli still asleep, her features softened in the quiet morning light. For the first time in what felt like ages, there was a sense of peace. He moved quietly to the window, looking out at the clearing beyond. Today, they would start construction. building the workshop they so desperately needed to stand a chance against Black Dawn. But before that, they needed to gather the team. Eli stirred behind him, blinking awake as the morning sun touched her face. She smiled softly. "Guess we survived the night." Gunnar chuckled. "We did, but now the real work starts." Eli sat up, stretching her arms. "I'm ready. What's the plan?" Gunnar moved to the table where they had laid out the blueprints for the workshop the night before. "First, we gather the others. We'll need all hands on deck to get this place up and running. After that, we'll start with the foundations and build up from there. We've got a lot to prepare. Weapon storage, reinforced walls, everything we'll need to stand our ground when the time comes." Eli nodded, a determined gleam in her eyes. "Then let's get to it." A few hours later, the team began to trickle into the clearing, ready to help with the workshop. Karina arrived first, her sharp eyes scanning the area as she took stock of what needed to be done. Ashley wasn't far behind, her sleeves already rolled up, ready to jump into the construction. Jewel and Bianca brought supplies, the medical gear they had gathered sitting neatly beside them. Sophia hadn't yet returned from her trip to the police department, but they knew she was working on gathering intel, finding any clue that might give them an edge against Black Dawn. As they began laying out materials and marking where the walls and storage would go, Gunnar felt a sense of purpose settle over him. This was what they needed, a safe space to prepare, to build, and to plan their next moves. The workshop would be their stronghold, the place where they could arm themselves and get ready for the final showdown. Under the midday sun, the team worked tirelessly. Eli was in her element, helping Gunnar sketch out the final designs for the weapon storage and forge. Her knowledge of alchemy and the Starlight Gem meant that the weapons they built would be stronger than anything Black Dawn had ever faced. Karina and Ashley worked side by side, constructing reinforced walls and planning defensive positions. Jewel set up a small medical station, ensuring that when the battles came, they would be ready to patch up any injuries. Gunnar looked around at his team, feeling a rare moment of hope. They were exhausted, battered, but still standing. They had come through worse before, and they would come through this too. But first, they had to build. The sound of hammers hitting steel and the hum of welding filled the air, and for the first time in days, Gunnar felt like they were finally making progress. The workshop was coming together, piece by piece, a symbol of their determination and resilience.